analysis report that was done at 4 o'clock on how UVX has helped. How you doing, Mike?
There's plenty of water at Lake Powell.
Did you go?
Yeah, we got
Good for you.
awesome.
The impact that it had on the air quality, substantial.
Okay, we're live.
Just UVX and, getting cars off the street and ridership and the systems
It's
that we have
low,
in
but
place,
it's not
the tonnage of.
To hear people talk, there's no water down there. There's plenty. We actually camped in Halls Creek Bay.
7's a good number. I mean, it's,
And that's at a time when they're perceiving it as low traffic.
yeah.
Oh, plenty.
We good to go? Yes. Okay, here we go. Saddle up. Get on your horses. Let's ride the Dodge. I'd like to welcome you out to our city council meeting tonight. We have a full agenda. So if at any time you feel like we're rushing things, we are. No, we're just trying to be efficient. That's all it is. But feel free to just raise your hand or say, hey, you're going too fast, or you need something else explained. We'll try to make sure we do that. So let's see. Council member Powell will offer an invocation, and then Mike, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards? Mike Florence. Yeah. Thank you, Randy.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, with humble hearts we bow our heads at the beginning of this meeting to invite the Spirit to be with us as we ponder the things before us. We are so grateful, Father, for this opportunity to live in this beautiful community and in this wonderful land of freedom. We are mindful of the difficulties that are before us, and we pray that we'll be able to make good decisions in order for us to be good leaders and good citizens. And we say these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're already ahead of schedule, so that's good. Okay. Randy, you want to start us the roll call, please?
Yes, I'm going to do it slowly. Randy Powell, present.
Jay Coy present.
Van Broderick present.
Jeff Acerson, present.
Carolyn Lundberg, present.
Mike Van Cherry present.
Great. We have a full house as far as council members. Thank you for being here. Let's review the minutes of the July 19th, 2021, my anniversary date. Not that you know that, but, and then, I was here, yeah. And the Public Works tour on July 28th, 2021. Any corrections, additions?
Doing pretty thoroughly. I didn't see anything.
Sorry, I left my actual notes on that particular one home. It seems like in the executive session, I want to say it's like page 14, I think we've got Van leaving before. It didn't say what time he left, but maybe it's not page 14.
About 20 minutes later than I planned.
So
Yes.
it looks like page 12, line 14, it
Yes.
says that Van left, and then it says that he voted aye on line 20. On line 20.
So he was here for the vote, and maybe the time needs to be put down and
But
adjusted,
we
so.
want to, I just,
After that, it seems like you did, right, Ben?
Yeah, he flew the coop. He was gone. He was ready to go. Okay. Any other corrections? Motion to be in order with that correction?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
second.
Kevin, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, Randy, if you want to take just a minute,
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that a former mayor, Noel Greenwood, has passed away. It was about a week and a half ago. His funeral was on Saturday. Noel was a mayor just as I was moving into Lindon. And it's at a very important time from everybody I've talked to in that era and pondering about what Noel was to them. I had an opportunity to chat with somebody who was on the Planning Commission at the time, Vaughn Austin, who was one of my very favorite people in the world. He was one of my high school teachers at Orem High, and I'm blessed to have him as a neighbor now. But he was reflecting on the fact that Noel was one of the most honest and forthright people he's known. They didn't always see eye to eye, but they did on the important things, and he appreciated that. I'm sure that, Jeff, you have things to add. Is that?
Very even-tempered, very genuine, very kind and thoughtful in his demeanor. Yeah, he's someone to be honored and appreciated, and his picture's up there on the wall, and you can just see he's the third on the top row to the right.
He's the first colored photo.
Yeah, first colored one, yeah, colored photo, so.
Yeah,
So,
he served from 19
lived a
to
good
94.
life. He was also an ecclesiastical leader. I believe back when Lindon went to PG, I think that it didn't have a stake building here.
Yeah, so if you have one of these books, Noel's name comes up repeatedly on a lot of things he was involved in, and I've had some fun reminiscing again on the things that he was involved in.
Yeah.
Read volume 2 of that book.
Yes, we're working on that.
The Acerson years.
ABC.
Where'd that come from? Anyway, we'll let that go. Thank you, Randy, and
Well,
I know the city, Adam, you were able to get some flowers, and
Yes.
thank you very much, that's appreciated, and I'm sure was appreciated by the family, so.
I'd also like to note, I pulled up an old Deseret News article, talked about how the city at the time, this was in 1991, was looking at creating a greenway through the city, and which is now our Heritage Trail. Vaughn said that there was a whole committee, and it was an opportunity for us to be able to carve out and keep a little bit of country from west to east, and Noel was a pivotal person in that, and he was also the mayor who was, you'll appreciate this, Juan, he was our mayor when we were implementing the secondary water system.
Yeah.
The pressurized irrigation system, and so a lot of credit goes to a good man, and appreciate all those who serve in our community, so thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, council reports. Mike, you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you. I had the privilege today to meet with Mike Lawrence and several projects. One, I think we got resolved. Would it be appropriate for me to say what that was? Yeah, it was Steve Chudley. If you remember, we had voted to sell him that property under certain conditions. Apparently, he and his engineer misunderstood the conditions, but as we worked it through, I think we came up with a solution that was satisfactory to everyone. So once we know what that solution is going to cost, then we'll be in a position to know what he'll actually end up paying for the property. So that was good. We have another business that is looking to locate here. Probably won't say yet who that is, and we'll probably see that one coming here pretty soon. I have received any number of phone calls, personal discussions, emails, text about status of Center Street, what's going to happen, and I explained to everyone that it's basically a three-year project, the first being utilities and improvements to the infrastructure that are needed. And then we'll go secondly with the sidewalk, curb and gutter and the improvements that we've talked about. And then finally, so as not to tear up any roads before their time, we'll finish with capping the road, rebuilding the road basically is what it would end up to. And everyone was pretty satisfied with that. The big issue that I'm hearing is how's that gonna impact the ability of the neighbors in the area to get their kids to school, because there's like 3 schools in that immediate area, and about the best I was able to tell them is I'm sure the church will handle their portion of the construction, and then I'm sure we'll have.
There'll be a wider sidewalk.
Yeah.
Which will be very accommodating for pedestrian traffic.
Sure.
It'll be on the south side of the road where that'll allow them so they don't have to cross Center Street, so.
Exactly. So So I apparently informed them correctly, and also I shared with them that they could get there off of 2,000 or 200, yeah. And so,
Yeah, maybe we can work out a deal where they can walk through the temple grounds and go through a back gate to stay in a safe area. I don't know, maybe,
I'm not ready to share that news with you.
well, no, I'm just, it just popped in my head because that should be a safe way to walk through, anyway.
Yeah, so I assured them that all that would be taken into consideration when the time came, and so they seem to be satisfied in that regard, so.
When do you think that time will be, Adam, for us to make some decisions on what our investment looks like from the Lindon City side?
We have some preliminary numbers that our engineers have put together, within the next 6 months is probably where we're at.
Great.
And yeah, what I've talked with Noah is prioritizing segments of Center Street. It's just the south side of the roadway that needs improvements. All the north side is completed. So it's just on the south side, prioritizing segments that they feel would be most beneficial, and then seeing how those improvements may impact properties, whether or not we do a narrower cross-section in some areas versus a larger. And so we've had those conversations. We've got some ideas that we've kicked around with some improvements at specific intersections as you go down Center Street. And so as soon as we feel like that's a little more concrete, we'll bring that to the council for discussion. What we don't want to have is mismessaging. What's the right word for that?
Miscommunication.
Misinformation going out to the public that we're gonna condemn your front yard. That's not the message. And so our hope is to be able to work with property owners, and again, it may be more or less area that we need from some owners. My personal opinion is that it's highly, highly unlikely that this council is going to forcibly take property to complete Center Street. I would be shocked if that were the message. I've never, ever heard that from this group. And so there may be segments that we don't improve. And so there's a lot of discussion that we still need to have. And so I would leave it vague with.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I didn't
Yeah.
impart that message, well, that may or may not happen in terms of property owners.
Well, part of it is that it'll be an open discussion. We'll move together with the citizens as well as the council, and it'll be an open conversation, and with the highest priority to make sure that the homeowner is accommodated in the way that as we can,
Sure.
that's appropriate.
Two more quick things.
Sure.
One is, I'm sure it's been mentioned multiple times, but I just thought Lindon Days was spectacular. It was great, considering this is, we missed a year basically. Car show wasn't as well attended, but those that went apparently enjoyed it thoroughly, and I've even talked to some of the people who exhibited cars, and they were tickled pink. So kudos to Parks and Rec and everyone else who put forth the time and the effort. So, and then finally, we were going to have a meeting this morning, actually, on the master plan RFP for the transfer station, but that didn't get there in time, so we're probably going to pull that in another couple of weeks. But I'm going to say it one more time. I know kind of what the general feelings are, and I mentioned it to Van briefly, but as you well know, that property is very, very valuable. If we sell it, the part that we'd potentially like to build on, but if we had to go out and find another piece or pieces, you know the dilemma. You sell it for a premium, but you also buy it for a premium. When the time is appropriate, I just ask that we keep an open mind, and some of the designs that we've been shown and some of the places that our director has visited, you wouldn't even know that they were transfer stations. They look so, there's some literally in downtown areas that the current the current businesses didn't even recognize what it was. So that's not going to be today. It's not going to be probably in the next couple of weeks or months even, but when the time comes, I would hope that you'd give a fair hearing to it. I think I know how most of you feel, but
I think we'll give it a fair hearing.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Carolyn?
All right, thank you. Following up Mike's point, there's quite a few residents on Center Street that are obviously concerned and wondering what's coming down the pike. What will be our noticing procedure when we do discuss improvements and how those will be?
To be determined.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, there's a lot of discussion that has to occur before we would even approach property owners. And so I would be very hesitant to say, show up to a public meeting and at our first discussion. It's certainly a public meeting, they're welcome to attend, but I would expect we'd probably meet with our engineering committee, which is Randy and the mayor, and discuss a few things and bounce some feedback or get some feedback off of several of you before we even got to a public meeting. And so nothing targeted yet. So the engineers, they prepared that cost estimate. They've looked at that 3-year phase plan. It's underground, shoulders, and surface improvements kind of in those 3 years. And so we're out 2 years before we would even do anything on the shoulders, most likely.
I think one of the greatest concerns is if any cost will be transferred to the individual property owners. So I think, and also I'm hearing, what traffic calming measures will be considered, and maybe some feedback would be appreciated to be transparent when we're going to discuss those things.
Okay.
All right. And then Anders Bake has now gone to Texas. Kathy and staff always do a great job showing appreciation to our employees. We've lost another good one. It's going to be hard to replace our associate planner. We wish him the best on his next ramp up in his career down there. The Chamber Tri-Valley meeting, Mayor and I were both there last week, and they had the Built Bar, one of the Built Bar founders speaking, and I thought he did a really interesting job of that.
He's an entrepreneur, and he sounded like an entrepreneur, which is great.
He did.
Yeah.
No, it was a great meeting there at Thanksgiving Point. A lot of great businesses there in the chamber, a lot of good networking there. Also, most of us on the council were able to take the secondary water tour with Juan, and that was amazing. Juan, thank you. You put together some incredible data for us to look at on the infrastructure needs that are coming up. And
you didn't water it down. Thank
nope. So a lot of things to tackle there in the next 5 years, immediate future, and it's exciting to have such a capable head of the department who can put together really hardcore data on that, so thank you. I also attended the Utah Lake Symposium, and just wanted to give you a quick update on that. They discussed a lot of things, but here's a quick little summary. The algal blooms are still occurring. They are created by the waste and the stormwater, plus agricultural and some natural causes. They currently have a $3.5 million project to improve the quality of the water in the lake. The steering committee right now has goals to support, they want whatever's done with the lake to support both recreation, the natural aquatic life, as well as the agricultural uses around the lake. They have lots of data on the historical nutrient load and the state of it now. They have about halfway through a 3-year study on that right now, and they're creating models and policies to execute those goals. Also, they're kind of trying to do that in tandem with the anticipated growth of the county and how the additional growth may contribute to the nutrient load in the lake. The publicly owned treatment wastes, fortunately, have already begun working on reducing their loads and what goes into the lake. One of the things that's been interesting, they're finding historically there's about 20% less snowpack since the 1950s. But they're looking at an entire 3,000-mile watershed around the lake, and they anticipate about 600,000 people now and 1.3 million in the future in that watershed. Good news was the June sucker, the native fish, was delisted from endangered, and it's just threatened now, so they're working on that. They would like to see the public still want to visit the lake. We have our own Lindon Marina that is an amazing facility. with lots of fun things. And they typically, when you hear of the algal blooms, they're typically happening down in the Provo area, Provo Bay. Anyway, so it was a great meeting with a lot of scientists on board, looking to see how we could make our Utah Lake beautiful again. So it's a big elephant to try to move a needle on or take a bite one at a time. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. And there's potentially upcoming legislation that Representative Brammer is going to be pushing this legislative session, which, anyway, just be aware of that. The Lake Commission are not in sync or have not been in sync with where he's wanting to take it. And a lot of the state agencies that have been a part of the Lake Commission have questions on the valid advantage of them coming under a state direction where it has its own taxing entity. Anyway, there's a lot going on out there. So just be aware of that if you want to weigh in on that. Brad Frost, the mayor of American Fork, is the chair, I believe, still of that. He'd be a good resource to have discussions if you're interested. And someday there may be a causeway or a road that goes across, and there may be building lots on the lake. They're talking about dredging and...
Very controversial right now.
Yeah, but reality of it is, with all the people coming here, that's a way they can fund a road across the lake, is by creating more land mass to actually sell and as real estate. So a lot of interesting things happening. So
Mayor, if I may, and this might not be fair to Carolyn, but you mentioned $3.5 million, I believe it was, to clean up the water.
Well, it's just a project,
Yeah.
part of the research and gathering the data. It'll take
Okay, so
much
the-
more
it's going
than
to
that.
take a lot of money.
That was my
Much more.
thought.
That's just some
I was wondering
funding
what that
Yeah.
included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which obviously didn't include any large-scale processing of the water.
Okay, maybe I'll just make a comment, and Adam, I think, already somewhat addressed this as far as Center Street in relationship to the development of the Lindon Temple. Just in reference, when we've had to go in and talk to the landowners, that when we do the right-of-way that the road is designated to have, we've met with them individually. I think there were 5 residents when we did off of State Street and 200 South. We met with them individually, and it was very good. I mean, it was an open discussion. What can we do as a city to make you whole as we move this forward? And I would recommend that that's what we follow. And maybe you do it in sections or segments, so you're not this huge group. It's maybe block by block. It seems to allow the residents to open up and see what their needs are. And I just can't be more complimentary of the willingness of the residents. Once they understand what's going on, and feel like they have a choice, or at least a voice in that, it really works quite well. And just to make it a little light, there was one resident, the woman said, well, I'd like you to put a new air conditioning system in my home. And I said, well, I would love to do that for you, but it's really outside of the scope. I said, and I wouldn't be fair to the rest of the residents if we did that, because, we've got to balance this, She says, oh, you're right. My son-in-law just said, it's the city. Get all you can get. But, she realized that that was more than what was appropriate, and she backed off that, and we did her driveway. And, I think, and I trust that you as council members will be sensitive to the citizens, and don't force anything. Make sure it's an open discussion, and I know we will, and it should work out just fine. Okay, Van.
Yes, my one comment on that is make sure people are involved early and feel like that they had a voice before final decisions were made, and so that
Talked to several of them already,
There
so.
are only about 25 properties, and so that we would be dealing with. So this isn't on a scale of 3,000 homes in Lindon. This is fairly small group.
Yeah.
So
and we want to make
That
sure all
idea.
25
We-
feel great about it.
we have hired a property acquisition consultant in the past that's actually helped us with appraisals and property acquisition and preparing deeds and transfers of ownerships and easements. And so very likely we would be doing something like that again. And they've been very instrumental in negotiations if we've reached that point, so.
I love that idea, Mayor, of looking at it kind of segment by segment, getting the involvement and listening to what concerns they have with traffic or.
Okay,
Okay,
Accessibility.
did attend on August 10th with Juan and others, hosted by Central Utah Water, a discussion on the Provo Bench and North Union Canal. There's lots of possible options coming up that can have significant good impacts for Lindon and significant impacts on other shareholders in the water process. I know we'll be talking about it a little bit later. One of the things of note that struck me in that discussion was they made the comment that of the last 20 years, 17 of them have been considered drought years. And so as we're in a drought, we're in an extreme drought, we're in a very extremely severe, I mean, they're running out of adjectives on what to say there, but, so we're having this discussion coming up later, but I'm glad we're kind of at the front end of this and looking at what the possibilities are, because it's changes are coming that we've been talking about for a long time, and the drought is gonna make them happen probably sooner than people had thought. And especially as we start looking at some of these 1 or 2 users on the end of a lateral, that the lateral is completely deteriorating, and it's somebody that just waters their backyard with it, that the idea, we're gonna probably have to go to those people individually, and that's one of the talks right now, and to take care of their needs, and then do what's best for the overall canal system too. But a lot of exciting things, and we'll have a lot of discussion about that tonight that I think you will enjoy.
And do you anticipate that the negotiation might be that they get an exchange of Provo water shares for like a city?
There are many options
Yeah,
right
many
now
options.
being discussed, and the idea would
And
be,
retire that line
that would be the
rather than
hope.
having to rebuild it.
Yeah, part of the things is when you have a line, and if there's 2 of you on it, and you're down a mile, and you project $500,000 to maintain that lateral, which is those water users' responsibility, not the canal shareholders' responsibility.
That's my doodling.
Many options will be there, but the numbers are gonna drive this to what will make the most sense. But many options are available, and a
Okay.
lot of it inefficiencies on how to water 10 trees
Gives me off my phone.
and just to use the water efficiently, so.
Spoke to Heath today. Again, Lindon Days, what a success. A couple of the changes that were implemented were highly successful. Grand Marshals, thanks to you too. Thanks for all your participation. Pool is closed for the season, which is a little earlier than normal. It's so that they can put in the slide. The slide is taking a little longer than anticipated. I know Heath had mentioned that perhaps we would do a employees council party to do the maiden voyage of the Splashtacular. I think Adam had been volunteered as the maiden voyage down the Splashtacular.
The maiden part anyway.
Well, apparently Mike is our new spokesperson for all things video. You volunteered him, so
There we go. So
good at that.
that may or may not happen is what Heath wanted me to explain to you guys. But that's the stats are to come. He felt like it was a fairly profitable year for the pool. I know we've looked in years past of ways to make that at least break even from our operations standpoint, and he thinks they're pretty close to that. So we'll look forward to seeing those stats.
You said the concessions were amazing.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
and I look at Alan and his several ideas that he's come up with, the new snow cone stand as well as ways to raise revenue, and they're running it like a little business, and I love to see them doing that and getting creative on ways to cut costs and increase revenues. It's great. Chamber of Commerce, Lindon Pleasant Grove Chamber of Commerce golf tournament is September 10th. They typically give us 2 teams. Traditionally, we've filled that teams with council, staff, and then police officers. If we can get a number
I'm a tentative,
sooner
as
rather
long as
than
I
later
have
would
good
be
golfers
great.
like Mike and
What day?
Alex.
September 10th, 8 a.m. shotgun start.
I have had one hole-in-one in my life, but I will not be attending that.
Okay.
That's my only one.
Tentative.
I'm up
We have good golf.
3/4 there.
I'm helping all the back end stuff, so
Okay,
you guys
so
go
you'll be
run
there
the
but
team.
won't be
Yeah.
golfing. Mike, Van, is there any interest there from you guys?
To use a scriptural term, I suck
Okay,
when it comes to golf.
okay.
I don't mind helping.
Mini golf, right?
I'll give two tentative here. Adam, if you maybe want to send that out directly. I know that in the years past, they've kind of hit us up later rather than sooner, which has been like, oh, hey, we can't golf because it's in 2 days. But if you can look at September 10th.
Mike,
if
you're
we
on,
could-
aren't you? Who else?
I know
Orlando's-
Orlando loves to go and gives me a
Yeah.
hard time every time I talk to him, so.
Yeah, he's a go-to, he likes to go. It's up to, whatever. We have two foursomes?
We have two foursomes, total of 8. If we can
That's-
just fill
we can- We
those,
can probably accommodate.
that would be great.
Is Chick-fil-A bringing the
We'll let
food?
Mike coordinate with that, and so.
Let me know. Okay,
Just make sure we have a winning team. That means I'm not on the team, so. Oh, that's good.
it is a good tournament every year. Lots of Lindon businesses both sponsoring holes and participating in the tournament, so, that's all I have.
Okay, Randy?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, like everybody else, kudos for Lindon Days. It was a wonderful experience. I will say, I have one not so positive and one extra positive. The thing I heard the most is the timing of the parade. So if anyone has thoughts on that as you talk with Heath, I think people are thinking either the day or the timing of the night is hard for little families. And so that was my only negative one that I had. But that fire, I do not know what they did for that finale. I've never seen a firework like it be executed like that. Just whatever it is, I don't know what they threw off in the air, but it was the most beautiful finale. And it was different than any kind of, it wasn't just a lot of fireworks. They were,
I agree. It was almost better than the Stadium of Fire
Yes.
this year. It was amazing.
was that finale segment was wonderful. And I will say though, I will ask that we do what we can to make sure we have a canopy or something for the band next time, because it was hard to see them and they were awfully good. So if you'll put that off to Heath, that would
I don't
be
know about
wonderful.
you guys, but I also heard a lot of people say, bring the fish back for Huck Finn Days or else.
Oh, yes. So if you'll let him do that, I understand that people had thoughts about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Juan, for that water tour that we had secondary.
helpful.
I know I've asked for that for a little bit, and you pulled that off amazingly. And though I wasn't able to see everything because of my foot, thanks for making sure I could see the majority of it. And also thanks to Matt and John for helping us with that. It was a lot of information that we got to do with the SCADAS program upstairs. And wow, I just wish everybody could see how cutting edge Lindon is. We are not just out there with our shovels and turning on the secondary water. It's a wonderful program that you guys run down there. Thank you so much. I attended the Historical Commission meeting. They are off and running for first time since I've been back on council, since COVID. And so they're working hard. They're looking forward to Christmas. And so that's their next big thing. So if you have any thoughts about what you'd like to see from the Historical Commission, I told them I would bring back any concerns or thoughts you might have and want to have them understand that. So. Just trying to move along and probably forgetting things. Regarding engineering meeting that I attended not too long ago, when we only have our meetings once a month, we forget when things are sometimes, but want to recognize that Kevin Muhlstein, 36 years with the city, has retired, and it's a long time coming for him, but it's something that he'll be missed. And we appreciate all the things that Kevin has done for the city, so wanted to acknowledge that. The talk has been, I wasn't going to touch on this, but since the talk along the council line has been about Center Street, we've had some wonderful meetings with Juan and the mayor and I should say. I've had wonderful meetings with Adam and Juan and Trent and Noah, all on this. They've been doing such a wonderful job in collecting and getting information that we will soon bring to you as a council. All the concerns that you are putting forth are things that we've all been considering and want to make sure that it's done in a way that's appropriate for not just the optics of what it's going to look like, but also for the community and how they're going to feel. The one word I heard over and over was voice, that they were able to have their voices heard, and that's really important. I know for the mayor and I, that's something we constantly are putting across. Staff is doing their job on the more analytical side, and I will say I'm kind of bringing I want flowers and things, you know, I want it to be pretty, of course, and so I am kind of bringing the female touch to that. But,
No, that's a male touch as well. I like
was gonna say,
flowers.
but I was gonna say, I'm only second to the mayor wanting to make sure now, if Noah just wants really pretty gutters on this project, and he will admit to that, so, but that's where he wants to make sure that, and of course, Adam's making sure we stick to the budget and everything, and Juan just runs a great team. As we talk about this, we have to understand that we're doing all of this, and the timeline all along the time, and trying to make this work with the Canal Road overhaul, which is an area of town that was already on the docket to be done before the announcement of the temple. And so Juan and his team are just making sure that we can get all of this done in a way that we keep the traffic flow and access to schools, and it's kind of a pinch point right there, and trying to get that all done in a proper manner. They are working really hard down there, and so I have full confidence, because I don't know, I cannot say enough good things about how Juan and his department run that. And I think, two more things. The collection boxes that Tabitha's Way has around town, I know that other people are noticing this, but the collection is just piling up, and it's looking very shabby. And I wonder what it is we can or should do, Mayor Heath. I'm not sure, Adam, what something that it's not looking so junky and unkept. And I know a lot of this is because of the closing of
You
the
know,
access to Desert Industries.
Yeah, to that point, Randy, I think what we could do is ask Tabitha Way to put a sign up there when it's full, have their address. It's not that far away, that they can drive there and drop it off there, because I've dropped quite a few things over there. And then we can maybe just see what their normal schedule is, and if we can make that sooner than later.
I don't know who the contact would be with that. I think Heath has had some contact, but.
Yeah.
Well, Sharon Call is actively involved with Tabitha's Way. She might be a good place to start.
Okay, I just was hoping that we could make the city look a little tidier with that.
Yep, sounds good.
And Adam, to the Keeping Lindon Tidy, thank you for your letter of encouragement to have people understand we are working really hard to keep our city tidy, and I appreciate you handling the situation with an individual who has come before the city council before in the past, so thank you. And my last thing, thank you, Mayor, is I'm so excited. Now that all the Lindon days and things have been buttoned up, Heath and I are starting with some meetings and some decisions for Christmas decorations, so yay. So I'm just excited about that, so thank you, Mayor. That's
So
it.
Christmas is coming this year.
Yeah, it is.
So be noted, okay? So plan accordingly. Thank you, Randy.
Let me add one thing.
Sure.
Randy jogged my memory. Someone reached out to me today, and I know we're down staff, and it's a really tough time around the Family Dollar, Walmart. That whole corner is just starting to look so shabby. There's broken fencing, weeds. It's just not being maintained at all. It reflects poorly on Lindon City at this point. So I don't know what we can do to reach out.
We know the store manager very
Okay.
well, so we'll communicate that.
And the
with them.
corner where 700 intersects with State Street also is
Always
just
city manager.
looking quite a bit more dilapidated.
They just don't listen.
Yeah, I know it's a tough time, but anyway.
Okay,
you.
and just to note, fireworks, I talked to the gentleman that provides the fireworks to us, and before he was dressed in coveralls and he had a hard hat on. I mean, he looked the part. Someone was gonna launch those fireworks. And he said, you're gonna see tonight some fireworks that have never been displayed anywhere in the United States. So that's part of what you saw. So, and Heath is just so complimentary of, he's never increased his price on us, at least that was what Heath had told me. And then every year he just seems to up what's done. So if we get a chance next year, we ought to recognize and do something that just in recognition of his association with us.
I really like the length of time it goes, the finale, it's just.
Perfect.
Finale was
Gets
awesome.
right to the point and does it, about 8, 9 minutes or so, maybe 10, I don't know, but.
And I want to make one suggestion before I turn it over to Adam. I've tried for multiple years to honor the Andersons, and they've always had their Clydesdale show. And I talked to Jed and another brother, and the father's not, I mean, it's probably not going to work. So for him to be honored as a potential honoree at the Lindon Days. But I think what we could do is maybe, as we approach that next year, look at couples or individuals within our community that are probably in that senior time of their life, and it really doesn't work that we can individually recognize them. But I'd like to maybe just have a whole group of people we honor, and maybe we do it in the 100-year celebration, or maybe we do it, designate some people that don't physically need to be so active, but can still be honored. I'd like to at least suggest that we consider that going forward, because we have so many good citizens, and what an honor to just recognize them and the commitment and what they've done for the community. So anyway, that was a mayor's privilege to say that. So anyway, okay, Adam.
I don't have anything other than what's listed there, so.
He's so good. He knows we've taken more than the allotted time for our reports. He's going to make sure we get through. Okay, let's go ahead. The all reds. We're going to give you a few minutes because it's open session, and you're dressed like Lindonites, with the cowboy hat.
We wanted to come and express our appreciation to the leadership and the community for honoring us this past week. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. When we moved here in '92, we felt that this was the place for us, and it's proven that way. The last 28 years we've been here, I've been gone all except for 7 years. And especially spending 8 years in Afghanistan, things that happen over there really tear me up right now. But we want you to know how much we appreciate being a part of this community.
Well, the feeling's mutual.
And so we have a little cheesy gift, and this is, no, it's not really cheese.
Even better than cheese.
Yes.
When you eat it,
Because this is the first day of back to school, we thought Twinkies and Ding Dongs would be a good treat.
I'm a ding dong.
And then
Me too.
the special plate just says that it goes in a circle, and we will always be your friends, and we appreciate the circle of friendship that we have here with you and with the other family and friends that we have in Lindon. When you think of a little bit of country, you also think a little bit of friendship, and that's what it's like here. And I'm just so grateful for, both of us are so grateful for this wonderful honor and privilege we had to serve as your grand marshals and be able to see the citizens of Lindon in that way and have your support. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Okay, we have consent agenda items. Well, actually, any other public comment? This is open session. Sorry. Come up and state your name and address. And the mic's right there if you'll speak into the mic.
My name is Maxine Smith. I live at 260 South, 280 West. Right now, have been here for a long time. But I wanted to come and talk to you about an issue. It's okay, I'll stand.
Sure. Yeah.
I originally bought ground in 1973. And at the time, back in the 50s, I happened to pick raspberries with my grandmother right here. But I wanted to talk about a piece. This is 200 South, and over here would be, this is 280, right down through there. But anyhow, the parcel ground is like 7 acres. And so originally there was a home here with terraces, a detached garage, and a barn. And they sold it to Waltville. And that's where my story begins, with Walt's house. And Walt at this time began to sell off 3 lots, an acre, and they'd done 3 lots. And so they were like, took first 8 feet off of the acre and 8 feet off of Waltz. And this comes to the right-of-way. And so the green marking down here is a right-of-way, 16 feet. And they divided that acre into 3, which is the dots. So this happened the late 60s, before the city had the ordinance of the larger lot for homes. We come along after, in 1973, and bought a 2-acre piece here. And we come to the city and ask for a road to be put through, as the county had said. And they said, build out as is. So at this point, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. We were the 5th division of this piece of property. And so we did not face ours onto what would be the proposed road. We faced our house east and west on the right-of-way. And at that time, later, 3-4 years, you put in the sewer system. And we said, how do we put it in? Okay, 16 feet, culinary water and natural gas. And they said, oh, you gotta put it in. We didn't know how you wanted to. And I presented the letter in 2019 because this house right now belongs to my daughter. Okay, she bought the property. Okay, and so that was another division off of the original piece. But anyhow, I said, what do we do about putting in the sewer? And they said, oh, you got to. And I said, how? And so anyhow, one of the city employees said, make a partial payment locking it in. In 2019, I presented the letter of the sewer system, and the fee was $250, and the receipt dated by Wilma Taylor that we had locked it in. Okay, in 2019, they had to connect onto the sewer. And so we did bring that forth, and would come to Adam's attention. And it turned out that Adam left me an email saying that the city records had been destroyed. They didn't longer have them. And because of inflation, he wouldn't honor it. Please note that the city has kept that down payment for over 43 years. That's one of my concerns. And in about 1993, You'll sold this after he'd done another division here and sold it off to the Miller and the Strawberry Estates, which would be the Hooley property. So anyhow, Martel come in and bought this existing piece here that we see. He cut off the home. He then made another lot here. It's a half-acre lot. And then he cut off another one to put his home on, and then he left 5 acres. Okay, and he came in 93. Joe put the right-of-way into the road, took away our backyard, because it now faces a road, and put curb and gutter and sidewalk on his side. We said since he put that we wrote a letter to the city council and mayor and said, from here we really would want a permanent dead end. And so that was the agreement when he would develop 3 lots off of here. So anyhow, time has changed. When we built our second home here to accommodate aging parents, we built in our own field. And that application came before the city in May 1995. And they said, oh, you build there, you need to put curb, gutter, and sidewalk in. And we paid for it. I brought that application before Juan in early fall of 2020, last year, and asked that curb, gutter, and sidewalk be put in. And he said he would look into it, how the water drains, where it drains to. Of course, it goes down to 200 South and down the drain. And then I didn't hear back from him. So I visited him again, and they've copied this application 3 times. He's dated it for me as I visited. So he said he'd get back with me. On 3, I didn't hear from him, so I visited him a 4th time, like last month, early last month, and asked for what was going to happen, because he had made several different things that they were going to do. And in the letter he presented to me, he said they would not put in my curb, gutter, and sidewalk until this ground is developed. I paid for it 26 years ago, and that would improve my home as I put it up for sale. The city's had the money, and in this Martell development, as I understand, Cul-De-Sac will come here and he will develop here, but this will be for his kids' inheritance, not to be built on right now. I'm asking the council right now, because of what's happened here, and you've kept my money, and you've got my money for this one, that you would install curb and gutter, a sidewalk to my home, that I don't have to have the issues of, coming back with you having the money, me selling the home, and it is a problem, because this was never made a true cul-de-sac. And they come up to the fence, and they back forth because it never was full enough for like the garbage truck. So I'm asking you tonight, please put in my sidewalk, curb and gutter.
So, thank you for coming. We appreciate you addressing the council. Mike, are you up to speed on this? As far as whether or not, if we have the money, a couple of options. We can give it back, or we put the improvements in, or...
There's a lot of history here that's been mentioned that we would need to do some more research, and the council's unable to make a decision.
Right,
on this
it's,
in an
yeah.
open session item, but in 2019, I found the email where we did discuss the sewer connection. You provided to us a copy of a receipt for $25 from 1977, 41 years ago, that we didn't have any records of or any verification of what it was or what it was for. And we did not feel it was based on the recommendation of our building official and finance director and myself that it in any way met the clarification that a sewer connection was provided or paid for. And so that was our decision at that time for the sewer connection.
Mayor?
So how do we move it forward, or at least come to some conclusion? And I know we can't do that right now, but give us some direction that the council can, at some point.
We're happy to meet with Maxine again and go through that information. This is dealing with one of the applications that's on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
And so this next item after the consent agenda, so that could be part of that discussion. I think that
Okay.
will help bring some clarity to what's going on
Okay.
after we review that. But as far as payments made for improvements, we'll have to look into that as well.
Sure. Just 1 second. Juan, you were gonna say something,
So
then I'll come
I
back to
visited
you.
with Maxine a few times, like she said. First couple of times I was brand new to the job. I told her to get back with her. And then eventually we sat down, we talked about the situation, what she wanted. Okay, stepping back. We can put curb and gutter and sidewalk, but there is no place for that curb and gutter to discharge. So
Yeah.
we have to contain the water, that either by installing a storm drain, a sump, or extending the curb and gutter all the way to 200 South. So I told her that we were gonna do some engineering and see when the next phase of road improvement will come, and we potentially can improve the curb and gutter to get the water out to 200 South. In the meantime, Maxine says, well, can you just write me a letter saying that you will not charge me again
No, I didn't ask that.
to install, that I already paid for it. Says, yeah, we acknowledge that you paid for it, and that when the road comes through there, the city will pay for the curb gutter and sidewalk to be installed in front of her.
Okay,
May I make a comment?
sure, yeah.
When Joe Martell put in this road, normal situations like the Bishop's development, they were required to put curb gutter and sidewalk on both sides and the cul-de-sac. And on our side, because the ground does slope toward and goes down the hill, they put just a curbing. They come with the asphalt, made a curbing like this and called it a gutter. And that's where the water drains from. Is down there and down 200 South. And so,
Yeah, I don't think we can solve the problem right now, but you've been able to address the council, and I think we ought to follow up and just make sure that we weigh in on,
And follow up again.
and I'm not sure how much time is needed. Are we weeks, a week? How much time do you think, just to give it?
It may not be feasible to put in any improvements. That's part of
Which is fine, I mean, that's part of the discussion. I mean, I'm not saying we're gonna end with this, but at least some clarity on the timing or when or what the options are, I think. Is that?
Maxine,
Yes, we can do that. We've met with Maxine
is what-
multiple times
Yeah.
on these issues, so.
is what we're hearing that even just some assurance, like if you do sell it, that you would have something for the next owner to understand where things are at and what may happen down the road? Is that something you're looking for if it can't be put in immediately based on engineering constraints?
because of the history of buying this ground and dealing with the city, I want what everybody else has. I paid for it. I've done what the city asked. Okay? You didn't want me to build on the ground that had been in our generation, the Smiths, for four generations. So I sold the ground because I did want animal rights, and I bought this piece of property. And then nobody wanted to put the road in. So when I built this, and now everybody, I am frustrated
Yeah.
because this piece of property right now, I'm dealing with Main Street, curb gutter and sidewalk. And you know that I came here a couple years ago, about three, a little over, about the right-of-way. And you let an apartment go in, and then you tell me about my building lot.
Yeah, just remember, as mayor, I don't let those things happen. I mean, it's not me that let it go in.
You said that the lawyer was a good guy, and he said, I believe that it would stick to the ordinance.
Yeah.
And that situation right now is that there is actually, they divided the property. So there's 4 pieces there and 2 pieces on this side of the right-of-way. They now have a renter, they have running a personal business there, an employee coming.
Yeah. Well,
So, and it doesn't do any good to talk to Phil Brown.
well, we're gonna get some clarity on what the city can and will do.
And then you
I think
put in
that's-
the-
We will reach out and meet with you, Maxine, and see if we can help
But,
resolve the
You
concerns.
said this now since I've had it, and that you put in the Heritage Farm Development. Not once was we ever notified of anything. I can't even maintain my property on the west side, because every time they keep digging away, and I've come to you about it. And again, when I come to Phil Brown, about 4 years ago, and he goes, oh, I haven't addressed the property owners. And he goes, watch, you'll take down another 4 or 5 feet beyond the 10 feet that's already there in the sand hill. He wouldn't even control the dust. He said, maybe it will rain. And again, I come last year and talked to him because they were digging away on that property line again. And Phil come, you sent Phil out. Well, they had dug down on Don Peterson's side, they covered that back up. Me, nothing, it's just a drop off, and I can't even walk on my property line anymore.
If you would, what I would ask you to do, and you can or make that decision, if you would take out a piece of paper and write down those key points, so we can address those individually to make sure that we document or have an answer of what the city will or will not do. So you've got a record of at least something going forward.
That's why I asked for the record.
But I'm just saying, starting from this point going forward, trying to resolve the issue that you've brought before the council, you know, it'll give us a starting point where we can make sure there's clarity, because
Okay, and I'm done with,
I mean, you brought a nice map, but I'm looking at that going,
But you're doing the same thing that Phil Brown done, and nobody will address the issue of my place. And you know what? I've maintained the right of way for over 40 years. I can no longer do that. You know, and so far as the records, yeah, my husband was a city employee and took the records down Lakeview Road, took them out and they burned them in an incinerator. Yeah, so that's why you don't have the records, but I had a copy. And I'm just asking that my curb and gutter and sidewalk be put in, it's there for the sale of the home.
Give us a chance. Give us a
Mayor?
chance.
May I just peripherally address
Sure.
Maxine? Maxine, you've addressed the council. We appreciate you coming forward. I want you to know you've been heard here by your council. We are your representatives, okay? We don't know, and we can't hear, we only have the opportunity here to listen to you in this forum, but we've listened, and just know that, you know, you've perked our ears. And as we go forward, as the mayor is letting you know that he's giving you some advice, and I know you've done a lot of those things, just work with us as we work with you, and hopefully help this be resolved better. I know many of you may know this, but I've only recently met Maxine, but she has long family history for generations. She's married a Smith, but she's a Green by birth, and so she's spent a lot of time here. And I can tell, just by the little I know about Maxine, that this is tearing her apart to be here and having to go through this. I want you to know that I acknowledge that in you, and we're going to do our best to try to work this out and go through the details. So you've been heard here.
we'll do better than our best. We'll bring clarity to it so you know where things are.
Maxine, what's your address?
260 South, 280 West, Lindon. Do you want my old address? I moved here in, is it okay to say? I moved here in 1946, and I lived on 790 South, or West, 200 South. So I've been on 200 for
A long time.
I recently drove down your street because I remember when you came and talked about the gravel right-of-way that you maintain, and, you know, thank you for putting such good efforts forward on that. And I was just trying to get familiar with it, and that is such a unique spot, and it's got so many little legacy kind of piecemeal things that have happened on it. I understand your frustration and wanting to have it just, you know, bring it up to a certain standard.
due to the age, and
Mhm.
I'm not able to continue to take
Right.
care of all the obligations that that way. So
Right.
I do appreciate, but decisions determine destiny. And so I'll leave that with you.
Give us one more chance.
Give us a chance.
Yeah.
And besides, our ancestors have done a great job here to make the place what it is.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to address the council in open session? I guess not. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to the consent agenda items. A motion would be in order.
Motion
Discussion, I don't believe it. Okay, we have a motion by Randy,
for the consent. agenda.
Second.
by Van. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I believe that's unanimous. Thank you. Motion to open a public hearing, please.
I make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Van, second by Jake. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in a public hearing. Thank you.
Put this on the-
Mike?
All right, thank you, council members. So Mr. Martell here in the audience has made an application to amend the general plan street master plan map. There's a close-up, let's see if that'll move. There we go. So the current map shows 280 West being connected between 400 South and 200 South. Back till about this showed up somewhere around 2001 on our map. Previously, on maps, it had not shown up as a, let's see if I can find one here. Sir. Previous transportation maps. It did not show showing that going through. And then in about 2001, in talking with Mark Christensen, he thinks what happened is, we're just looking for opportunities to connect streets. And so this is one of those streets that, if you look at the map, it probably does look good to be connected. When Mr. Martell's subdivision was originally approved, he was approved for these two lots, 1 and 2, but showed a preliminary plan of what he wanted to do with the rest of the property. The city council or planning commission, I couldn't tell on which one of those minutes it were, but they recommended that the street not go through, that there be 2 cul-de-sacs at the end due to the way the site drains, as well as the Second South, kind of a blind spot there on the corner of Second South. So I went out there and took a few pictures. As you can see, this is if I was lined up with the stop sign there with the car. It is blocked as you head eastbound on 200 East. As you pull out further, a little bit further past that, then you can see where the stop sign would be. So you have to pull out to be able to see any oncoming traffic. So that's what the city looked at that time as well. So Mr. Martell is asking to go back to the original plan pre-2001 to be able to cul-de-sac 280 west on both ends. Let's see if I got that. As you look at our general plan, it talks about keeping a balanced transportation system, and so you 400 west, you still can get between 4 south and 2000, or sorry, 4 south and 2nd south, and so the planning commission, they gave a recommendation of the council to remove the road, the connecting road between 200 south and 400 south. That was their recommendation to you. So Mr. Martell or myself would be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Mike, just given our last individual here that was here, can you identify Maxine's property?
I don't, so her name showed up on both, I was looking on the parcel map, it was on both of these.
Right. On the hand-drawn or the handwritten? The Aspen Ridge.
So Mr. Martell wants to do the subdivision later on. Well, he wants to apply soon for subdivision approval. I'm not sure how soon you'll be building out all of the lots. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit. Joe, I've got that up here.
Yeah, so actually, the intent is that my kids want to build in Lindon. We built the farm. It was stipulated when we originally did the subdivision that it had to be a cul-de-sac because of the site issues. And so we kind of built out the farm based on that. So they want to build on the south cul-de-sac there, the 3 lots. And the intent is that we retain as much of the original farm as possible till after we die, after Barbara and I die. So that north would not be developed for probably another 30 years. Well, I don't know. Depends how long I live, right?
Well, the way you're running, you'll probably last forever, but.
Oh, no, I'll get hit by a car or something. But, so the intent is really to develop the south and leave the north intact as the core part of the farm. Does that answer the question?
You got 3 kids?
I actually have 4 kids. One is not interested in coming back here. He lives out in the boondocks in southeast Utah. But I have 3 kids. One kid wants to start building like tomorrow, like yesterday. But I told him we need to go through the process. And actually, when we started going through the process with Dudley, it was brought to our attention that it was a through road. We didn't know it was had changed to a through road. And so he said, oh, so you gotta go through the process to change the general plan, and so that's why we're trying to do this.
Is one of your kids Joe Martell Jr.?
Joey Martell.
Joey, cellist?
Yes.
Okay, he taught my son cello lessons years ago.
I think I went to school with
Yeah.
your son Ray. Is that
Ray,
another one of your
he's
sons?
the one that's gonna build.
Awesome.
First,
Good for
and
him.
my daughter Gemma wants to build probably in a year or two.
Are you
Is-
looking to adopt any more children?
Jake is trying.
I would
Yeah,
love
you-
a
build a new
father to
place.
give me a lot.
Yeah, you know, when we started, we just had a half-acre of Concord grapes on there, and now we have a couple hundred, 100-something fruit trees. We planted 500 Christmas trees. We built all
Yeah.
our farm infrastructure based on, knowing it was gonna be 2 cul-de-sacs. So all the
It's beautiful. I
irrigation
drove,
and
I
stuff.
drove up Maxine Street the other day just to
Yeah.
kind of get a lay
Yeah.
of the land, and
Yeah, and
it's
we've really
a
tried
pretty
to
nugget.
work with Maxine, and we put that road in so she could build across the street, and there's a lot of history there.
You know,
Just
I don't know that you need to go into that. I drive this area a lot, and,
Yeah.
and the worry you have sometimes is connectivity, right?
Yes.
I don't think that you putting 2 cul-de-sacs here, you'd be impacting it. It's very minimal. Most everyone's going to use the existing
240.
infrastructure. The only people who would use that through street are maybe the lots that would be put there. So I'm very comfortable with this, very comfortable with the recommendation from the planning commission, are my thoughts. And I think they'll be beautiful lots, really.
Yeah, they're nice lots.
Our thoughts on cul-de-sacs, being that I live in one, that the water, I always go to this. When you do a cul-de-sac, make sure it's nice and deep, because my water right now is very warm.
My kids always come, where's the cold water?
There's no cold water, so bury it deeper than what the minimum is. Go way deep. So
Yeah.
that's my thought always on cul-de-sacs.
My dad gave me his favorite tie and a pistol when he died. So that was it.
So Mike, any concerns?
No, I think, connectivity is always the concern, but, but as you look around there, you do have that. I mean, this does connect 4th South to 2nd South a lot easier, but it's just something we have to balance, and, there are options around there.
I agree.
650-foot max, it's
We measured that.
maximum.
Yep.
Okay. Not looking for a conditional anything there.
Adam?
Okay, I know Maxine left, but if I could just identify a few things, because I think she was here probably because she received a notice about this development. And so on that, just on the property immediately north of where that north cul-de-sac then is, Mike, if you could just highlight that. So that's, well, just north of that one. So that's Maxine's property. She
Right.
borders this development. She did pay for improvements, curb gutter sidewalk back in the mid-90s. Juan has given her a letter documenting that, verifying that she's paid. I'm
Yeah, I'm
unclear on what.
I'm not questioning, it was a
Is it a
little
sewer?
challenging to follow the whole
It's-
process.
It usually is.
That's why I suggested, let's list the questions to make sure that we address each of those.
And especially which lots she's referring to. I know, she's got the 2 lots and done it at different times, and to know what is attached to what, and
So we do have a sidewalk improvement fund, and we track where those addresses are and what monies have been paid and what frontages it applies to. And so we have record of that. We provided documentation to her of that. The sewer connection issue, they're connected to the sewer. I'm a little fuzzy on what
Once again,
concerns are.
if we can somehow articulate those so we can at least have,
is that the 25 or 250 or whatever?
It was $25 paid in 1977 on a handwritten invoice. It just says Lindon City, $25.
And that's what I'm
I don't know
confused
what it's
about.
for.
She said down payment, or was that in full?
I don't know what it would be for.
Okay.
Her husband was employed by the city and worked in our public works department for 20-plus years. I would assume that if there was something that needed to be done, that he was well-versed in what that was. But that's been 20 years ago since he passed away. And so there's a lot of history there. We will do our best to work with her on that. I just wanted to, this is probably all kind of interrelated. I wanted to just bring some more information there.
I'm just wondering what the present value of $250 back then would be. That's certainly not gonna build very much sidewalk,
You
curb,
said
and gutter.
250, but you saying it's 25.
25 for the sewer.
Oh, for the sewer, but the 250 was for the curb and gutter, as I
No,
understand.
No.
She paid like $1,950, which in 1995 would've
Would've
paid
done
The
it.
value.
But
So
my-
part of the concern
She
is-
did say something about 250, and I made those notes, but it came back as 25, so I don't think it's
Yeah,
two numbers, I think.
okay, that's what I thought,
I
too.
was in the same
I thought she just
wavelength
spoke
as you.
25 in
Yeah.
error. But 1,950, boy, that'd be interesting to know what that is in today's dollars.
Yeah, if the Martells choose not to develop that north cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
her improvements on the street would be floating in
close to
between
Mhm, and
no improvements on either
Those are
side. And so
one
there's
there.
nowhere for storm drainage to run, there's nowhere to connect curb gutter sidewalk. And so that's part of the difficulty in helping her understand that until further improvements are made on either side, that's been pretty standards that we would retain those funds. They
We
don't
have other
to pay
areas in the
more.
city where that's
There's
the
a
case
flow.
right now, it's the way it
We
is.
have several dozen, and so
On 200 East, I know
Is it
there's
true
a
that the
section there.
property owner to the north of her has done some subdividing? Wouldn't they trigger having to do improvements?
She was referring to the cul-de-sac that's to the west, I believe, because she mentioned that property owner.
So that's
retired
Heritage
her
Farms
home.
that she mentioned right there.
They've done some excavation and put in some planter box areas and terraced up behind their yard, which sits below hers. So she's up higher and then it drops off. Our building inspectors have been out, she's called the police on them, our officers have been out, I've been out, Hugh was out several years ago and looked at all of this.
Landscaper.
It's in conformance with what we would need.
You just have to slope it a certain degree and
Retain
that's
it.
the way
Is it
it is.
properly
landscaped?
retained?
Is
She's
the landscape
concerned about some of the
maintained?
dust that's been created.
There's
Other
one
neighbors
that's not.
have complained about dust from
There's
horror
one
for
that's an older
animals.
home
It's
that's
a little bit of feuding going on. We've done our best to try to mitigate that, but it's been a lot of years of talking to Maxine, and so I just wanted to bring some of that up and some clarification.
Well, there's even some additional history that we could go into, but we won't. But it's challenging.
Yeah. So
But-
in relation to this proposal, her concerns are legitimate with those improvements and when they will be installed, but it may be a long time.
Well, to the mayor's point, I know it's not ideal to build sidewalk, curb, and gutter that's kind of a stranded section, but like he said, there are places where it's happened, especially when a new home is built.
What could be the difficulties until this north cul-de-sac is constructed and we have that finalized, we don't know what those elevations are.
That's the challenge.
The grades, you don't
And
know what they
so
are.
what we would hate to have happen is that this development comes in the future and, you know, when it's graded and they bring in fill material and the road ends up being at a certain elevation that we didn't anticipate, then we're tearing out curb, gutter, and sidewalk in front of Maxine's to make this all tie together. And so we wouldn't want to cause that.
Was that her children that lived on her property there? Can they be part of the discussion, and does that help or not?
It hasn't in the past.
So the right-of-way
Yeah.
gravel road that she shares with the north neighbor, on her map, she made it look like that they've been subdividing or have a business in there, and that property does not have curb and gutter going to 200 either. Are,
It's not a road, it is a gravel driveway that is shared between.
a gravel driveway, yeah, right-of-way.
Yeah, and so there was an accessory apartment that was approved probably 10 or 12 years ago. And that's what I think she was referencing tonight.
Right.
So that little driveway there, that is not a public road that I recall.
But on her map, she made it sound like that they have further activity on their
So is that
portion of
Maxine's
things.
It hasn't subdivided,
Okay,
at least since the 90s.
house? Was that Maxine's
All right.
with all this? Is
Yeah.
that hers?
So nothing recent in the last 20 years that I'm familiar with, Carolyn, other than that accessory apartment that was approved for all those.
So here's the question, as this moves forward, if it moves forward, how is it gonna be perceived potentially by her? Is that a concern, or do we
A
need to
through road?
address? Well, it's not gonna be a through road, you're gonna
sounds
do
like she
two
wants a
cul-de-sacs.
cul-de-sac.
She wants,
So
so
we're-
I've talked to her.
Will that be a step in a positive way?
Oh, yeah, she will not be happy if it's a through road.
Okay.
Well, and when those improvements finally do go in, that north cul-de-sac, that will trigger her improvements being put in, so
But that's out
but that's in the
down the
future.
road. Yeah.
And I can, just a little bit of history, when we first bought this property to subplat, to plat where we built our home today, we had to bring in that road and the utilities, which have been connected to, so there's been 2 sewers connected to it now. We bear all the cost of all that. And there was a lot of fighting to get our subdivision in. And when we had originally curb gutter sidewalk, they said, no, they did not want curb gutter and sidewalk because there are a lot of horse people. And they did not want that. And so it changed, I think, when they built, then she wanted it.
She references gravel road, but as far as I'm aware, it's paved in front of her house.
Oh, yeah.
City streets are all paved.
Yeah.
The gravel
She was referring to that
easement
driveway.
between
The
her and the
private
neighbors.
It's
Yeah.
a shared driveway between her daughter's home and the properties to the north there.
Right.
So it's not a public street.
This is probably more interesting than relevant, but $1,950 in 1974, is that the date? That's, but
1995.
That was 95.
Oh.
But
New
give us that number
calculation. Yeah,
anyways.
Throw it out.
$10,700.
What was a gallon of gas then? Oh, just kidding. I will say, I too have driven that in the last week, and I am all in favor of having it be a double cul-de-sac. I just think that the topography and the way, I think for safety reasons, along with a lot of others, but I think that it's best served the citizens as just 2 cul-de-sacs, in my opinion. So, and I love the opportunity to preserve more of the ruralness, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It does preserve a lot of the character and what we're looking for.
We have a motion for you.
On that, we have to go out of the public hearing to make
that's right.
that, so. Mike, any concern? Are you,
I'm good, for sure.
Van, Carolyn?
That's all good.
Okay. Any other public comment? Hearing none, motion being ordered to close it. Is that Randy?
Oh, Randy, she snuck it in before bed.
Wow, that was pretty darn good. Second, if somebody
Okay,
didn't.
motion by Randy, second by Van, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now,
Do it, Ben.
And for the,
Go ahead.
Randy, are you wanting to
No,
Van
take
wanted
that?
it really bad, but.
Van wants
No,
it.
you go right
I'll
ahead.
second it, Van, you take it.
I move to approve ordinance 2021-15-0, amending the Lindon City General Plan Streets Master Plan as presented.
I'll second it, Mayor.
motion by Van, second by Carolyn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And just as we shut that
Do the
door,
vote.
I just don't want to be the cause of a heart attack. And that's, and I'm not saying it's not our fault. I'm not saying it's our fault. I'm just saying,
Just needs to be heard.
let's try to see how we can
That's what I wanted.
Put her at ease a little
bring
bit.
clarity, somehow bring clarity. That's, and that clarity may not be
What she wants to hear.
what she wants, but I think if we can just step that through, so as a council, we can feel that we've heard and we've responded in a way that is appropriate. Thank you. And by the way, our legal, they're good people, so I you know.
In your orchard.
Yeah.
What fruit?
Okay,
What type of trees?
One more thing. $1,995. I gotta get this in. $3,395.
Which is about probably what it would cost.
yeah.
Thank you, Martels. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Are you still running, Joe?
Heck yeah, I go by your place all
I know, I see, and I'm going, man, is that the same guy?
I gotta talk to your guys that are extending that road up.
Okay, we can do it. Thank you. Okay, item number 9 is another public hearing. Someone want to open
Open the
that?
public hearing.
Thank you, Randy.
Second.
Second by Jake, all in favor?
Aye.
We are now in a public hearing. It's accessory apartment ordinance update.
Great, thanks, Mayor. As you're all aware, the legislature, Utah legislature passed House Bill 82 this past legislative session. Is that 84? Thought that was 82 for accessory apartments, but maybe I'm wrong on that.
They passed it, just
They
say it's
passed it.
done, yeah.
So, they created a new term, or new acronym, IADU, which is Internal Accessory Dwelling Unit. So basically what they have done is, stated that municipalities need to allow internal accessory dwelling units, basement apartments as a permitted use. Then they gave some standards with those. So I just put this table together real quick so we can go through those. Basically, what they've said is that they have to be a permitted use, internal accessory dwelling units. They haven't done anything with detached accessory dwelling units at this point, but they have said that they're permitted use. They can, you can prohibit them in specific situations. You can limit up to 25% of your community, and you can limit them on lots for 25% or less, or sorry, 6,000 square feet or less. So we put together this map real quick. You currently prohibit them in the Anderson Farms development by your zoning code. And so what we've put in the ordinance is that they would be prohibited in this area. Now, we did include the Fieldstone development as well, and we can discuss that. But currently they would be prohibited in the Anderson Farms development, which 25% of your residential area is 520 acres. Is 25%, that equals about 6.3%. So you're way under that 25% that you could prohibit internal accessory apartments. The other thing what the ordinance does is it does prohibit them on lots 6,000 square feet or less. Want to see how comfortable you are with both of those approaches. And just as a caveat, Ivory Homes, Chris Gambrillis reached out to us last week, and he wants to come on September 20th and talk about accessory apartments at Anderson Farms. So they have come up with a new model that has a built-in accessory apartment and parking spot or garage for those. So he wants to make a presentation on September 20th. Now that this ordinance, the state law for internal accessory dwelling units does go into effect October 1st, so the league has recommended that cities adopt their own ordinances or update their ordinances by that date.
But it only requires one parking stall.
Yeah, that is correct. So just going back
For
to
a
that.
semi, though. No, I'm kidding.
An RV and a car.
So it created that definition of internal accessory dwelling unit, which means within a primary dwelling, within the footprint of a primary dwelling at the time the internal accessory dwelling unit is created, and for the purpose of offering long-term rental of 30 consecutive days or longer. So we wanted to adopt that same definition by reference, adopt the same definition of accessory dwelling, so we're consistent with state law. We have our own definition right now, but adopt the same accessory dwelling unit definition as the state. And then they created this new term called primary dwelling. And so it means a single family dwelling that is detached, is occupied as the primary residence of the owner. And so we wanted to adopt that same reference or definition by reference. Though a state law says for an internal accessory dwelling unit, you can only require one parking stall. Our code currently requires 2 for internal, and so we would decrease that down from 2 to 1.
Compliance with it, yeah.
But we would keep that same number for detached. So we kept all the same requirements for detached. Let's see, that requires that an IADU be designed in a manner that does not change the appearance of the primary dwelling. Now our ordinance currently says that you can't have another door facing the street for the internal accessory dwelling, but we've taken that out, and we've just put, because the state also adopted this year that we can't have design standards for single family homes. And so by saying
Anything.
You're
in trouble, or potentially.
So basically, we've just adopted the state law that says you can't change the appearance of the primary dwelling. We'll have to figure that out as we go. The other thing, let's see. Right now, we require an agreement that property owner signs an agreement that they won't rent over a certain percentage, which is that 80% AMI for the county. We also put an affidavit on the property saying that it's owner occupied. And so what the state has done is they've come up with this new notice that you can record by itself on the property. So we're going to get rid of that accessory, get rid of the agreement and then just record the notice on the property that has an accessory apartment, that it needs to be owner occupied. But we've gone away from that, signing the 80% AMI agreement. Want to see how the council feels about that.
It's basically an agreement saying they wouldn't charge exorbitant rent prices because this was one of our methods to achieve affordable housing in the city. And there's a table that's periodically updated.
It can be applied that keeps it within that framework.
We're doing away with that, and we've never audited those properties anyways.
That's what I was gonna say, is it's never really been, the
enforced.
data hasn't been collected or enforced or anything like that.
And the other thing the legislature did this year, remember the 23 housing strategies? Well, they took accessory apartments out of that since they mandated everybody that they
Oh,
have
so
to
it's
have
no
them.
longer a goal that a matrix point
Right.
for us anyway.
So we're gonna need to look at that modern income housing plan again as well. Make sure we
Goodness.
like all of our goals. The other thing we've done was we took out the noticing requirement. Right now in our ordinance, after someone's approved for an accessory apartment, we just send out a notice. So since they're permitted everywhere, that's why we took that noticing requirement out. We can still keep that if that's something the council wants, but since they're permitted everywhere except for the places we say they're prohibited.
So question, Mike, you say they're prohibited on any lot that could be under 6,000 square feet. So on a map, are we gonna show where there's other multi-unit locations kind of interspersed throughout Lindon?
We didn't, we didn't go through with lots that are 6,000 square feet or less. And this only applies to single-family homes. So we didn't even include any multifamily projects just because they're not
Okay.
allowed.
So like the twin homes on 200 South are outside of this box, or like Queens Court, which, do they,
That's
up on these- They're townhomes. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're shared walls, this is a different animal.
Yeah, this
Okay.
specifically calls it out as just single-family homes, detached single-family.
All right, so those type of units are already called out as not eligible.
Right.
So regarding the AMI, rent, that was one thing we've discussed this past year, was what if we did collect the data on what people are charging for rent, and that could be a reporting methodology to show that we do have some moderate income housing or that is being provided to the state, so we could collect that data. Is that still something that would be of value to do?
So we don't collect how much they're charging, we just say you can't charge over this.
Right, but the question is, we had discussed in the past, was should we engage with those that are doing accessory dwellings and ask them so that if we did have some numbers to report that could be advantageous for Lindon City to say, yes, we do have some of this inventory happening in our city.
I'm not sure the state's gonna care about us reporting them anymore since they've mandated that you just have to have them.
Well,
Heretofore, haven't they just, if we sign the agreement, if they sign the agreement, they just accepted that as de
Right.
facto that we're meeting the 80%.
I understand what you're saying. They're not saying that ADUs count towards that 21-point matrix or 23-point matrix. But on the other hand, they are going to probably, if we look at what's happening in other states, they're gonna say, well, Lindon is just all these, upper-end, single-family homes. What are you doing to help meet affordable housing needs? And that could be a data point that could help us if we collected it.
I think one, and that's a good point. One other item that Adam and I pulled some quick numbers last week. So we have 2,400 detached lots, I believe. Is that or water connections or whatever?
I believe we're higher than that. Offhand, more? I thought we were at 29,800.
Anyways,
So-
and we have about 230 accessory apartments, so almost 9% of our housing is in accessory apartments. I think
Right.
that percentage is a good number.
So for
to
example,
report.
my home is, the people that are having the advantage of that are within that AMI threshold. I would love to be able for Lindon City to get a credit for that with the state, saying, here's a moderate income housing inventory being provided.
We could send out a request for people to voluntarily submit that rent data.
I think before collecting it, let's see if there is some possibilities that it would help. You know what I mean? Is there is there an authority we can ask on that? Is there?
We can't require it.
No, it'd have to be voluntary, but I think in anticipation of what's coming down the road with, more pressure being put on cities to address affordable housing, it might be smart to be a little bit ahead of the 8 ball and have, some data on that, potentially to say, yes, we are being proactive. And here's some numbers of, while other cities are doing really high density to try to address that, we can show Lindon does have some of that online already.
Yeah, let's look into that. I like it. I do worry about the perception. I do think we're working hard to try to accommodate low to moderate income housing, and sometimes we're not giving credit where credit is due, and so I like looking into that and finding a way to show them.
Can we get a credit for the housing we provide to people that don't pay rent?
Yeah, like family members.
I'm serious. I mean, I've got.
Oh,
I have
absolutely.
family members living in my house for free.
Our hotel is open and we're not charging, and we ought to get
Exactly.
some kind of
I
credit for
have
that.
college students that come live with us for free, that are
Anyway.
former mission companions of my kids. So that's where I'm saying, I would love to know if that's a question. We have these larger, more gracious sized homes, and I think there's a lot of affordable housing or free housing, as the mayor puts it, occurring within our city that we can show.
All I ask is for them to cut the lawn and take out the trash, and that doesn't happen often. but-
Right.
I mean, let's check with the league, I mean, not to take, just to see if they've got a pulse on what the state is requiring, so we can stay ahead of that, and do what we need to make sure that we're providing the kind of information that will benefit us, I guess. In other cities, I mean, how do we rate with other cities, Mike, as far as our neighbors? As far as,
I thought it was interesting, this was last year when I was doing some research on it, as big as Salt Lake City was, they approved two accessory apartments. And we approved like 9, and they're, what?
Well,
The same size.
Thousands.
we've approved 9, that doesn't mean that we haven't had more than that, and it's because, and for the reason, people know that we are okay with accessory apartments, and so, and I've always applauded Lindon for our forward thinking for this, for a very long time of being accepting of these accessory apartments.
and we can put tiny homes out on the landfill, Mike.
Oh, come on.
They're doing it up in Salt Lake. They really are.
You wanna be like Salt Lake?
Well, I'm just saying, push
No, I
comes
know,
to
we
shove,
Yeah. Well, but my guess is too, if Salt Lake's only approved 2, that certainly doesn't mean there's only 2.
Well, it's like us, we probably
Yeah.
A lot under
approved
the
9, and
radar.
we
Lot
probably
under
have
the radar.
15.
Yes, we have
So-
double.
But pretty much outside of Ivory Homes, every new single-family home that the city is approving anywhere else all have accessory apartments.
Yeah.
Do you know what Chris Gambrillos is wanting to present for Ivory? Obviously, he's wanting them not to be ineligible.
I think
for
some of the
IADs.
larger estate lots that maybe meet a minimum square footage in size, that those
Okay.
would be allowed. So if they're a 10,000 square foot lot or 8,000 or something, they've got a certain model that,
There's a few out there, yeah.
Probably come prepared to negotiate with 5 more years on our commercial fees for that.
They probably,
Amen.
gosh.
they probably wrote the law or the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He called and talked to Mike and I, and between me and I think we felt like that was reasonable. If there was lots that met every other requirement as anywhere else in town,
They should qualify.
We said, sure, come
Yeah.
discuss it with the council.
What are the lot size down in Fieldstone? Is there anything that's above 6,000 now?
about 10,000.
Average 8,000.
That's
So
what I
there are
thought.
some that are 10
yeah.
and some that are less.
They don't have basements.
Right, and that's
And
where
Fieldstone.
he said this new product that they come out, they have several options that it's constructed with the floor plan having an apartment and a garage that's accessed by the apartment, but from the street great idea, let's see what you guys think, so.
Yep.
So it's just a concept review that he wants to
But
come
I
in
like
on.
your idea.
You know, something to keep in mind, because everything goes back to roads. To throw that out. If we look at.
Transit,
There you
transit, now
go.
it's roads transit.
I mean, so if we've got a really narrow road where they're wanting to do it, and there's only gonna be one required off-street parking, they're ending up on the street. And if you get that on both sides, I don't know if we can include something like that, but road width there for the safety of the traffic going through, the clutter, I think that's something we should keep in mind.
Yeah, and that
That's
was
a good point.
part of the basis in our development agreement, we excluded the Ivory development from the R2 overlay, which would allow twin homes or townplexes or triplexes interspersed with accessory apartments through that development, partly because of road widths and the amount of intensity of lots and other higher density things that were around that area. So that's what I recall, and we explained that to Chris, and unfortunately, he had forgotten about that, and so he felt like, hey, you're creating this ordinance that's treating us differently than the rest of the city.
But they are different.
But they got an accommodation on those
Yeah.
narrower
He did.
streets.
So I think once we had that discussion, he was kinda like, oh, yeah, okay, but I'm sure we were throwing him under the bus multiple times.
Do we know how many units we're talking, potentially?
These are estate lots he's talking about.
Yeah,
It would be
every
yeah.
home that was over that 6,000 square foot would do it.
Right now, everything's built out except for this single-family phase here, and then they've got this last corner phase down here in the bottom.
I'd have to look at that map.
So it would be a huge number.
No.
Are the street widths gonna be the same in those areas as they are in the current single family? If you'll just bring that information when he comes. I went and drove through those single families and they're already pretty narrow. I can,
Makes it somewhat uncomfortable, especially if you have kids in the neighborhood
yeah,
and it's tight like that. It-
We'll have that information.
Yeah.
perfect.
Are you good with this map, or are you okay excluding the fieldstone as well, or is that something?
I think,
Have any existing approved ones in Fieldstone currently? We don't.
Not that I'm aware of.
It's always been,
I
I'm
don't know why we
comfortable.
would treat them any different.
They don't have basements
Yeah.
down there.
And they have narrower streets as well.
Yeah.
I think theirs are 32 feet, or,
It depends on the road.
okay.
why don't we
28
take
to
baby
32.
steps and then if push comes to shove, we give it greater consideration? I mean, is that,
Nobody's pushing for it, I guess.
I mean, if it comes up,
What
far
would
as-
be the aim to identify certain parts of town within that 25% allowed margin? What would be our purpose to exclude them in certain areas? What would we be hoping to accomplish? Just congestion is one.
Traffic, on-street parking, yeah, limiting the density in certain areas, the intensity of development, I think those would be probably the primary factors. And again, all of that, as I recall, the discussion was health, safety, welfare of people on the street, the traveling public. That's probably where I'd go. But on a couple lots, there's some big lots that are east of that new park down there that maybe it would work just fine. I mean, there's some 10,000 square foot lots that,
Right.
and we've got homes up on the hillside that have accessory apartments that are smaller than that, so there might be.
some potential consideration there.
With the new legislation, I mean, obviously, someone can have a related family member anytime regardless. This is just non-related
30 days or more.
rental.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay,
if-
go
So
ahead,
if we're
Randy.
trying to say that there's a potential, there's certain areas besides Fieldstone and Anderson that we would like to potentially target as being exempt for qualifying for this, is there some potential of a problem if we are targeting, XYZ neighborhood, or because of, like you say, constricted? If we happen to find a neighborhood or a particular street, would we run up against a problem with that, Brian? If we were to spot target?
As Mike was saying, as long as we are consistent, we're looking at the same parameters.
Okay.
Again, the
6.
6%, so as long as we're well below that 25%, I think we're gonna be pretty good.
At what point do we need to target them, though? Can we bring them in as we go along and say that this is something that we're having a problem or concern with, and then we have to bring them up and just update our ordinance on this? And
Yeah, I guess that would be the case, because right now, everything else in the city, we've already allowed them for 25 years. And so that's where I guess I don't know why we would be targeting.
I'm not saying that we should, I'm just, if something comes up, how do we implement this? We've never had to have a,
It would just be a city-initiated ordinance
Okay.
change to update this map.
okay, just like we would the street master plan.
Going
I
forward,
just
it
wanted to
would
clarify
change
that.
potentially, yeah.
Thank you.
Thunder Mayor, we ready for a motion?
I've been trying a couple times.
Oh,
so,
I-
I'm kidding.
I
I'm
make-
kidding. I gotta laugh there. We good to go?
We gotta
Well-
close the public hearing.
Motion,
But I do have a couple things here quickly. Is this a time when we need to talk about, or at least consider, in order to make this a better ordinance for our citizens? Because what I love about this is it's 30 days or more. I'd like to make this availability so that we get more permanent residents versus the short-term rental clientele. Do we need to at some point address lowering the amount for our permit?
accessory apartments?
Accessory apartments, to make it more attractive for people to then apply, so that we both get our affordable housing data up, or opportunities, or just a thought that maybe to talk about it another time, and I don't know if it's at this time with this ordinance, but this is just some of my thoughts that I had on this issue.
Look at that, I mean, you're subsidizing the cost of building these as a city. Right? The costs that we charge do not cover our costs to even allow for these.
Now, what,
Just something to keep in mind, we had an impact fee study that justified several thousands, and we lowered it to 1,500 a few years ago, and.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I mean, at one point, we were 44,000 or 4,500, so.
Yeah, we can
Back
bring
when I
that
came
back
on.
up in a budget hearing if you'd like to rehash that, and.
And just, the food for thought, because of wanting to make sure, for me, that we make us more attractive to people who are becoming part of our community, not people who are just coming and having a reunion or something like that. So for the, more of a 30 days or more clientele or citizens, I like the attractiveness of that for this new ordinance.
now, one of the things this bill did also, well, it was one of the other bills, I think, 84, but it does, cities can no longer require separate heating and air between accessory apartment and the primary home. And so, I mean, that's a huge savings right there. They also reduce the thickness of the sheetrock, I believe, as well, between units. So,
And I do like how it gives us opportunity to enforce it, some enforcement, some teeth for that.
yeah, the state put that requirement in there.
So to Randy's point at this, we would love to have more people in the system, not under the radar anymore, but known entities within the city. So if we look at messaging out, hey, these previous barriers that may have prevented people from reporting, they have now we call it IADU. You no longer have to have the separate HVAC and the firewall requirements, and, what could we do to help message that out and get more numbers reported in?
Maybe find out where the pinch point is for people who are not doing it.
And obviously that fee, the $1,500 fee could be something that keeps people away from disclosing. Are we currently right now, going forward with this new SB 82, how much are we going to manage or oversee the ADUs? Are we going to still have the annual letter that goes out, or is that discontinuing?
You're talking utilities now.
No, well, with the ADU, I used to get a letter that used to say,
Sent out regarding utilities if there's somebody renting it.
right, we no longer have the double utility billing, the double fee on there. We removed that barrier as well previously, so there's been a lot of good faith effort But are we still gonna send out any sort of information on them?
I believe so with utility, in regards to utilities, but we can message other ways through Facebook or social media or newsletter and try to get that word out with these changed regulations, so we can do that.
Quick ancillary question is, to your knowledge, is there any requirement, noticing requirements? I mean, do we have to show due diligence that we're reaching out to property owners to encourage IADUs? Okay. All right.
Okay, any public comment? We lost our public, okay. Anyone online? Probably not.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Van. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. So do we need to take action to align ourselves with the state?
One last question here. On page 48 of the packet, it says number 8, changes egress window requirement for bedroom for IADUs, allows requiring upgrade. Could you clarify that for me a little bit?
Yeah, so some of these older homes with a basement may have a smaller window that's not big enough for someone to get out of.
Crawl out of, yeah.
And so the cities can require, a larger window to be cut into the foundation so they have a fire egress from the home.
So is that going to be a may or shall, or is that going to be for sure they're going to have to do that? Can we clarify that?
Is it
I'm not
mandated or is it an optional?
I
Is
thought it was
what-
an option.
Yeah.
How does the liability go on that too, by the way, if something happens and?
Talking with Phil, my understanding, that is one of the safety requirements. You've got to have, to be qualified as a bedroom, it has to have that egress
Yep.
size window. And so I missed exactly where we were talking in the ordinance, but
We're talking about a pioneer home that no, I'm kidding. Because mine was built in 91 and you were required to have a window you could get out of, so.
practical effect is it's going to be mandatory because.
Yeah,
Because
it's a
you have
safety.
to be able to, and liability speaking wise, I know that if you go in and set up from the city, there's not gonna be any liability there. If somebody goes in and without a permit, rents these rooms out, that's not gonna fall any liability on the city. But if we were to go in and approve this and
Knowingly.
ignore the fire code, which requires a bedroom to have this size of window, then there might be some problem. But Phil's never gonna let us do that. No building inspector would.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm done.
I have one more question for you, Brian. So if we adopt this map as presented tonight, are we able to, on a case-by-case basis, potentially look at individual homes that are maybe called out for as an excluded area? On a case-by-case, give them, a conditional use to do this, or what would be that process?
We would have to come in and do an amendment, or they could go through the variance process. But honestly, adopting this map tonight would set that as a pretty solid standard, and it would be hard to get past that, because in order to get through a variance, you have to prove that it's not just an economic condition that causes the hardship. And adopting this map, I'm not sure what circumstances would justify a variance.
So would it be wiser to wait until until Ivory's representative comes and discusses what he's,
Because we can amend this very
fairly easily, okay.
Yeah.
You would just need to submit an ordinance change and propose the language.
Okay.
And pay for that application, so I would let him do that.
And just note that right now, our ordinance in place does not allow these in.
Correct.
Down there in Anderson. So he's gotta come through that process.
Yeah, we would
All
have
right.
to amend the
Either way.
development agreement with this little verbiage that it's changed. So there's some hurdles that he needs to go through.
All right.
And I've been here almost 3 years, and this is the third time we've amended this ordinance since I've been here, so.
It's a evolving. Darn it, all right.
We did close the public hearing, didn't we?
did.
That was a while ago, so I just wanted to make sure we did, so,
I'll prove that I'm done.
Unanimously.
I'll prove that I'm done speaking and make a motion if you'd like.
wonderful, Randy.
Okay, I move to approve ordinance 2021-10-0, amending the Lindon City Code Title 17.16 regarding accessory apartments as presented.
I'll second.
Randy, second by Carolyn. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like unanimously approved. Thank you. Item number 10 is once again a public hearing. Who wants to open that?
Oh, it's
To
not, though, is
open.
it? Oh, it is.
I'll motion to open a public hearing, Mayor.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Jake, you decided you wanted to second that,
I'll
right?
second it
All
now
right,
that I
good.
see it's there. You bet.
All in favor to open the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Now in a public hearing. I want to be one of those auctioneers, that speed it up.
Talk faster.
Okay, Mike?
Recently, the city staff and the planning commission have been working on an ordinance update regarding, or pertaining to reception centers and event centers. The city, probably about 4 months ago, received a request to put in another reception center next to Walmart. There's a vacant little piece to the south, triangle piece, and it didn't work there, but we started looking at, with the commission, how many reception centers we have, impacts that or complaints we regularly receive regarding parking, lighting, noise, and so we started to evaluate different locations and just different regulations that may need to be put into place. So basically, we looked at whether there should be a buffer area around reception centers, and this would only apply to new ones, and a different parking standard. And so what we were proposing was a 500-foot buffer measured from the property line of the reception center to the nearest single-family use or zone, and then a parking standard. Our current parking standard is based off the capacity of the building, and so let's see. So it's currently one parking space. Where's the code? It's currently one parking space for a 3.5 person capacity. So we looked at a 6,000 square foot reception center. That's the same size as the Wild Oak on Gilman Lane there, and so it required 61 parking stalls. They regularly overflow that over to the church, is where they use for additional parking. So we looked at other cities and what they require, and the recommendation was to use one similar to West Valley City, which is one parking space for 50 square feet of gross floor area. So that would require 120 parking spaces, which seems to fit better some of these uses.
So of the reception centers that currently exist in our community, would any of them still qualify
Well,
based on that new guideline?
probably, I didn't look at that. I mean,
I'm just curious. I mean, it's all,
the one right over here, what is this one?
Bella Vista,
No,
Castle Park would, Bella Vista would.
probably
And-
Wadley Farms. He
Yeah,
has a
we've
huge-
excluded the commercial farm zone
Okay.
from this ordinance. And then we've also excluded interior only reception centers. They could be in that 500-foot buffer.
okay.
It's the ones that, have more of the outdoor space that we're having.
Like the Lindon Barn,
What's that?
like Lindon Barn, something
Linden
similar to
Barn.
that.
We've had a couple complaints about
Because they have that
Walker
space.
Farms, and Mike Jorgensen took care of that. He's not doing outdoor DJ anymore.
But his wouldn't be included in this because he is in the commercial farm
He's in
zone.
the commercial farm
So
zone.
it doesn't affect the commercial farm zone at all.
It is not. So, we put that specifically in the land use table. It says, wedding reception event centers must be located at least 500 feet away from any area zoned primarily for residential use as measured from property line to property line. Distance restriction does not apply in a commercial farm zone. Indoor-only wedding event centers can locate within 500-foot separation distance where no outdoor gathering spaces or event spaces provided. Now, right before Andrews left, I did have him put a map together real quick, and I apologize, I didn't send that to you early enough, but, so basically, the gray area would show a 500-foot buffer from single-family homes. And so this would, basically, if you wanted an event space with outdoor area or reception center, this is where you'd have to go in one of these open commercial areas. So there wouldn't be much space available left on State Street. You would have to be more over in our research and business zone if it allowed it, or Geneva Road, something like that, or 700 North.
Curious, what is that bright green on State Street that would be available? What parcel is that? Is that Lindon Park?
Yeah, it is.
The hair salon and.
Okay, that area? Or is that actually the Lindon City Park?
Any of that dark green is public facility zone, so that's our city property.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Two questions on that. Right now, we have an existing 7-foot masonry fence. Does that stay or does that go?
That does stay.
Stays with it, okay.
Right now, that's our only buffer.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that stayed with us. I think that's a good thing. Then when you talk about an indoor facility that's excluded in this particular ordinance, are we running, do we need to address the parking with those? Is that becoming an issue with any of the indoor facilities? I mean, just because it's an outdoor, I don't know if that necessarily brings more people to a reception, or do we perceive the parking issue on indoor facilities?
Yeah, I have not had a complaint about the Bella Vista.
I was gonna say, if someone came in with a Bella
Which
Vista
they would
like
throw in there.
plan, they would not be expected
Lemonades?
to abide by this standard.
That would just lemonade,
Bring,
not
they
strawberry.
would, but the parking they would. Now, Bella Vista, if they only had 61 parking stalls, for example, I don't know if they'd have a parking, where they have, more than, they have a lot of parking around that office building, and where they don't share parking, they may have, if they didn't only had their own parking of 60 stalls, they may, I don't know.
I'm just curious, as for new facilities, that we don't create a parking problem. There's a potential, but maybe it's not there.
Yeah, they would still have to they'd still have to meet the 1 per 50 parking.
But help me to understand, if it's a Bella Vista, like if it's an internal or inside venue, then what's the?
They would only need to meet the parking requirements.
That's
Yeah,
okay, that's what I was
they can go in that buffer area.
No 500-foot.
Okay, so the parking on this still goes to an indoor facility?
Right.
Okay, I'm with you. I just
Indoor
wanna
and
make sure it was.
outdoor.
50,
All right, I'm with you.
so that beefs up the standard quite a bit.
Mike, is this an attempt to lower parking, or is it an attempt to lower the amount of reception centers, or both?
We
What's
don't
the
wanna get-
purpose of this ordinance?
The purpose is to have a buffer between, because I get a lot of complaints about lighting and noise. So that was to create more of a buffer, so we weren't getting those noise and lighting complaints. And then it was to try to right-size the parking with the use.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not an attempt to get rid of, exclude uses. That's why the planning commission came back and said, well, we think on indoor only, they should be able to go in that buffer area.
But it is a better mousetrap if we do attract any more reception centers. I mean, it solves a lot.
It's a lot harder.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder, but if you meet that standard, it satisfies what the issue.
I think that's the unintended consequences, that we probably won't have any more reception centers, which I'm actually a fan of them. I don't, we've kind of got a reputation of being this reception center of Utah County, which I don't hate.
Currently, don't we have 9 total?
I think we have 8.
8, okay.
I could still see you getting some indoor ones,
Yeah.
but
So the Orion is next
Ryan.
to Bella Vista. Has there been any issues at that location?
I've honestly never seen Orion open.
They were
since
open, I
I've been
saw them
here.
the other day.
Oh, were they? Okay.
They're open.
Was in
Okay.
there.
Yep.
Yeah, I just never, during the
So no
daytime, they just
complaints
may just
from the
never be
neighborhood
open.
behind them. And they don't have an outdoor space that I'm aware of that they could have
They've
DJ
got a little,
music.
they've got just a little
Little patio.
gazebo in the back.
Yeah.
But it's really, you couldn't fit more than 15 people back there probably.
I think I mentioned this parenthetically a while ago, but in our portfolio, the company I retired from, in our portfolio, which is thousands and thousands of loans, probably the one we struggle the most with were reception centers in terms of coming in and going out in a relatively,
Oh, not being viable for very
It's a
long.
fun idea, but it's a hard business
not
to
being, it is a hard business.
So that's the question, I think, we looked at types of uses, you know, do we want, you know, car lots, for example, we created CGA so that we could sort of manage quantity and is this something, an area where we want to, you know, our assisted living, we have 3,000-foot buffer from one use to another, or one entity to another. Do we want to look at that type of, you know, spreading the concentration of these, or do we want to just let market pressure, you know, if someone wants to open this type of a business and take that risk that the market isn't saturated, but put these conditions that protect the neighborhoods from being impacted? Those are the questions I'm wondering how council feels.
Well, I'll speak to that. I would prefer to have the market drive this, to have those who want to take the risk and the gamble. My biggest concern is the impact on citizens, especially the residents, and my most important issues are threefold, and it's parking, number one. Second would, and these are all very close proximity to each other, would be noise, and then lighting. And those are huge on people. And it's one thing when you have an occasional family wedding in your neighbor, you know, at your backyard, and or a company event for people who might do those. But when you do that on a regular basis, it has a big impact. And speaking to, I think Mike Lawrence talked to, I think you said, somebody said about Mike Jorgensen.
The Tree of Life.
Well, the Tree of Life is kind of a fun thing, but, and they do turn that off early in the evening. But Jill was telling me, Jill Jorgensen, I know her well, and she says there are DJs, and that especially one of particular name, it's almost his hobby to agitate and have extra ruckus.
Right.
No matter how much you ask them to keep it tame, that's more fuel for him to make it be something that is not appropriate for a neighborhood, and he gets a lot of joy out of that. And so there are particular DJs in some of these outdoor event centers that have banned at least this particular DJ from being able to be there because he's overstayed, or he's just not a hospitable person to have there. And so I appreciate the attention that some of these owners go to make sure that they try to get along well with neighbors. But that being said, the only thing I'd like to make sure is it's lighting, traffic, and noise. Otherwise, I'd like to say, you know, give it a try if you'd like to.
I don't think we effectively shut them out. I mean, that's not what we're doing. I don't think we're driving anyone from coming, although the standards are going to be stricter, no question about it. But I don't know that it's, I mean, in my estimation, probably if they go on that west side, like you said, over the industrial area, there's some places they could do that. I haven't checked lately, but the land prices are probably not going to be as steep as perhaps in a residential area or a conditional use or whatever. So there might be some offsets to that. But yeah, I don't know that we're going to keep anybody that really wants to do it. It's just like I said, I think we built a better mousetrap, and we've addressed a lot of the issues that you've just mentioned, Randy.
Make sure they're a good neighbor.
Make sure they're a good neighbor, and that's not too much to ask, I don't think.
I like that the commercial farm users have a little bit more leeway because they are owner-occupied residences in addition to the commercial use. So, and I've heard the same comments from Allen College that he personally lives there, so he will go at 10 o'clock at night, tell a DJ to turn it down, or neighbors can kind of have that.
Yeah, they don't allow it even
Look at
at,
that.
I think they shut it down at 9 o'clock.
Well, it sounds like we're good.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion we're all okay with this.
Public comment. Okay.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Jake, motion by Van, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I move to recommend the approval of ordinance, let's see,
2021-5-0.
yeah, 2021-5-0 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike, a second by Randy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous, thank you. Now we're on the second page. And we're only so behind or ahead. Discussion items, secondary water. Juan, you're happy that we finally got to you.
This thing in the gear.
Can we take a short
unless you want to take a 4-minute break.
Okay, we're taking a quick break. Juan's going, oh, I just got ready.
He's gearing up his PowerPoint.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I have never received a ho-ho and a Twinkie at a city council meeting. That's good.
I think it's a Twinkie.
Yeah.
Or a ding dong, sorry.
A ding dong, oh,
Ding
it's
dong.
not a ho-ho. Yeah, I don't know
That
my,
would be nice in the temple.
I've always said that we should get a federal grant to study hostess, because I believe that your personality can be described by your favorite hostess treat. So just think in your mind, what's your favorite one? Twinkie, ding dong, does that match your personality?
as a
I'll put
kid,
you
I
next
ate
to
a
one.
lot of those, man, but I haven't, I didn't know, I think they stopped making them for a while, didn't they?
They may
I think it was kind of held hostage for a while.
well with that wax and frosting. But if you have a ding dong, freeze it.
That's the best way to eat it?
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, do you remember who it was? It is really interesting.
Sorry, Kathy,
So they're
Adam,
not
I am not moving as fast as I wanted to.
The other one's track still going through there, but they were thinking. But that one's like, that's someone's pet project.
And the answer
There,
probably
this-
is that the trail is master plan there. and
That's
you've
helpful,
got-
I'm glad to know that.
I told them I'd look at it.
Yeah, so, yeah, they went into special session this last. Yeah, so the, hey, you recall the legislature prohibited cities from requiring this.
Looks like a steak.
It is.
I saw the other ones that were Utah State Legislature special session. Yeah, cause there's, you can't mandate, there was no public health office that can mandate anything. There's that, well, they can do it, and then there's 24 hours for like a mayor to overturn it, or a county commissioner to overturn it, and then they have 10 days for the city council to overturn it, which is what happens all the time. Utah County, their commissioners, the county department of health didn't propose it, because we know that one, but the county commissioners voted it anyway. Anyway, okay, let's get you now. So, yeah, nothing that. That's what I was asking about. Great, thank you. You know what, we've financially tried to do this. Well, yes. In some departments. Yes. We're like, yes, oh no, my brothers are both police officers. They had like the green light from way back when, and just philosophically, fire all the rest of that personality. It is, and then me, the moment it was open to me, because I had to tell services, I'm part of the report. I'm just right, you know? I'm just like, I see clients, you know, anyway, so it is, it's more like a philosophical.
Pretty sure we were on a unanimous decision there 20 minutes before.
I know.
But you're good to always let people speak.
Hey, Kathy, want a cookie?
Oh, I'm okay, thank you
Want
so
some
much.
jerky?
Oh, no, but that's nice of you.
Do you?
You will, it's delicious.
Is it? I don't want to turn down delicious
Go ahead and speak on the mic.
Check. We're kind of ready.
If you followed one of the things that we're considering to see if it's an option. Here's the canal trail. And the Murdoch Canal 400 North, and I just live over here. We've got a structure there.
Do a farewell party for.
And we budgeted money in this year's budget to be able to do a connection. Here's where
I wasn't able to give
the ditch comes down open and then we're piped from here on. We just pipe down to there. You remove the whole canal system and we're in that pipe.
Yes, of course, they're plastic.
If we did that, that would make Pleasant Grove irrigation, they would have to do what we did.
Yeah,
Because if you take out that flow out of the water,
yeah.
this would be wonderful probably for Lindon if the deal was right. But there's impact on Alex Lot.
It was about 45 minutes
It could end his ability to use,
But he's kind of almost there, isn't he?
I've driven by his place and why he's using a water share to water there makes no sense. It's very, very inefficient.
Yeah.
And he likes to say, hey, when it was shut down for a little bit, it cost me $620. I mean, I catch the pain of that, but that's just not an efficient way.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one of the things, Central Utah kind of loves the
They
idea.
like that,
You're giving water share.
Yeah.
Pushing the
Yeah.
PowerPoint
We can't have
screen over to the other one.
what anybody says or thinks, you can't have.
Yeah, I got a notice, and I don't think it pertains to my shares that I turned into the city, but I was gonna bring that letter tonight. I'll bring it to Brian. I think it's up to my cabin, but I'll have to have him look at it, because
I think I've had like
you have 30 days to
12
say
calories
you
all day until I got here. It's one of those
rights to
run
or
days.
something.
Do we have employees collecting overtime for, like the public works department or?
I think there's overtime,
Over,
yeah.
and is that something that we keep track of over time? Is it within the budget each year?
They get comp time, and then this year,
Move to do some overtime.
Some overtime.
Yeah, because we could be liable if we don't give
Yes.
comp or specific overtime.
yeah, so we have a cap on how much comp time they can carry, and after that, they have to be paid. But we also give them the option of, if they want to get paid overtime or comp time, to a cap.
Overtime they can draw up to. Okay.
We're good, let's do it. Woo! Hang on to your saddle, we're gonna move.
So this presentation, it's included in your packet, but then I just put some slides there as a refresher. We're not gonna go over all of them, if that makes sense. So the conservation measures that we talked about, the governor, we did get a new reduction on the natural flow of Pearl River as of August 4th. What that means is that only the people that have reserves in the upper reservoirs have actually access to the water. Some of them, they cut the limit, and some of the farmers are saying, you don't have reserves, you're done. But luckily, we have enough reserves that we can still get our water to provide for our residents. As of last week, we had about 1,400 acre feet. I'm planning on carrying 900 acre feet for the following year, just as a precaution. With the amount of water that we have coming down, it's at 9.5 CFS. And with those limits, we're pushing the supply for the current conditions. So with that said, I'm still planning on carrying 800 to 900 acre feet, just in case we have another bad year, that we can go a little further. So just the same thing, I want you to bring this, that 1 acre foot equals 325,000 gallons. And that's gonna be brought later, that we were requiring a share of water for an acre lot, size lot. So if you can see those gallons, most of our lots, the bigger lots are half acre, so that will give them about 185,000 gallons, and we're looking at reducing that to about that ratio that we're proposing, about 1.5 inches of water per half acre lot. So when we require a share equals the amount of water that the USU actually, Utah State University actually is recommending. But we are using almost twice that amount. So just wanted to make you aware of that number.
So we need to educate.
Educate, correct.
And it may be a natural education rather than a school book education when the water's not there, right?
Right. But we want to get, we don't want to get to that point.
Want to be proactive.
We want to be proactive, correctly. So we talked about.
My lawn is yellow, so just so you know.
You know what?
I want it once a month if I need it.
How often are you running your system, just for curiosity?
About once a month. I'm
Okay.
serious, my wife's.
You're doing your part.
Yeah, I'm more than doing my part, I think,
Yeah.
but.
About 2 days a week is what we have the cemetery at, and
Yeah.
and still holding pretty good.
And it's still alive.
Oh, yeah, it's,
In fact, when it rained that little bit,
It perked up.
it perked up. I mean, it was like we came back from Lake Powell and it was like,
Yeah.
we got a green lawn.
It was a lot of rain, though.
It was
There was a lot of rain.
And that was great. I mean,
Video of that
Yeah.
downpour.
What's interesting is, there, like, I know in the reading in this, it's saying if you only step on it to mow it,
don't have it.
you don't need it, basically.
Correct. So, looking at this slide on the secondary water fee history, I went back and looked at all the fee schedules that we've had since we instituted pressurized irrigation, and that is correct. We haven't had a single fee increase to the unmetered secondary water fee.
Reading between the lines, are you suggesting anything?
No,
I'm just bringing up the.
I think the logical transition is when we meter, that's when we impose the fees because then it becomes a usage fee.
What is the connection
Which
fee
is a
currently?
more acceptable one.
What is the connection fee currently?
It varies depending on the size of lots, and I will cover that up
Okay.
here in the next.
Adam, you're gonna say something?
So even though we haven't increased the secondary fee, we have increased culinary water, which is subsidizing the secondary
Yeah.
costs. And
That's a good
so
point.
it is true that we have not raised that secondary rate. But
In
water
actuality,
rates
we
have gone
have.
up and people are paying for those increased costs and services
Yeah.
through their culinary.
So but they can still also turn in a water share in kind.
Right,
value.
so new development, when they come and say, we want to develop so many acres, there is we require them to turn in so many water shares to back up the usage.
Right.
Yeah, that's not in kind for anything. That's a requirement in addition to any fees that they pay.
Yeah, you pay an additional fee to actually have secondary. And it's a monthly fee after, depending on the
Let's
size.
say there's an existing residence.
Okay.
If they want to hook it to secondary, my understanding is they can pay a cash equivalent or a water right if they have it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct.
So there's a valuation determined that's in kind
Mhm.
to the cash equivalent.
Right, yeah,
Yes.
so
Okay.
it's 95% of the going rate that they can, if they don't have the share, we can say the going rate
Is
is
this
this
amount,
much,
so you pay
95%.
Yeah.
Back to the history, in 2018, when Understorm Farms came to, we started charging them by the meter size and the connection. And then on top of that, we charge them for the water use, and they have been getting inflationary increases in the past 2-3 years. In April 1st of 2020, State Bill 52 required that all the municipalities start requiring installation of meters for new construction. And since then, we've counted about 142 new connections that have come in. Most of them in Anderson Farms, of course, but then there's also the little lots that get built here in town. And we've started to install the meters, and so we can start tracking. And on the last meeting, we were asking for clarification, and I don't know if you had time to think about that one, that any connection installed after April 1st, are they required to pay for the meter secondary water regardless of the location? That we're not just basing it on Anderson Farms, but do we want to start charging for that water usage, even though if it's not in Anderson Farms?
And our expectation was that we would implement that next spring, so that we would educate through the rest of this
So
winter.
they realize, as they use water, it's gonna impact their bottom line.
Yeah.
So they need to be conservation minded.
And it would also have the developer bear the brunt of the cost of installing the meter as well. Is that
Yes,
the idea?
so on the impact fees that everybody pays is already being charged that, so when they get their building permit, they already paid for the
So if you
meter.
develop a personal one lot, you're paying that impact fee
Correct.
that goes to metering.
So we've been collecting an impact fee for some time, similar,
Since April 1st of 2020.
right, so
Just for
very
that
recently.
Just for that reason, and we weren't installing those meters, but reading the law now, I've been instructing our operators to, when they get a minute, go and install the meter, so we can start tracking the usage, and then if we decide to go with we're gonna move forward with the education, how much water they're using, and then whenever we decide that they should start paying, we will make that recommendation.
You know, a comment to make there, in the presentations that came here before and in that meeting we're at, they talked about when meters go in, what was the drop in water usage?
At least 30%,
And that's without a fee. We're
Correct.
being billed for it.
just educating the public.
So sometimes as we step things through, you know, we educate, install the meters, and then I think a thing to consider is when do we want to do the fee, if we want to do the fee.
We need to do it.
Yes, if we reduce the water usage that much, do we then have to do a fee other than to just raise funds for all of the cost?
My vision is to create two self-supporting utilities, where if I have all these projects going to secondary water, I want the secondary fees to pay for
Bear
those.
those costs.
And the water, the drinking water fee to pay for the drinking water projects. It's gonna take me a little while to try to separate those, because we still have the same personnel handling both. So I have to start measuring how much time are we spending on each one, but at least the maintenance and the infrastructure replacement, be able to say, okay, this is the fee for stormwater to secondary water to support itself, and this. So we might see an increase in, if you approve it, have the fee for secondary carry its load, and then.
This may be a difficult question to answer, but right now, I think we're paying $10.60 or 65 cents a month for secondary water all year round. Based on the average usage of secondary water, someone that's put a meter in, what would you estimate their monthly bill would be just for secondary water?
I have a slide coming up.
Yeah, he'll get to that.
I knew you
That
did, that's
will-
why I asked it.
that will cover
It was a segue.
So with the Ivory development, it was a little bit unique because we built that lift station and it has a component for secondary irrigation pumps that are specific to the groundwater collection system that are through that development. So there was fees that were adopted and would need to still be collected out in that area for secondary metering usage. But it's just the way we adopted it in our fee schedule. It doesn't say only in this area of town. It doesn't have a map. It just says any secondary meters. And so that's where we're now the state's having these other developments install those. That's our question, is should we be imposing a fee on these other areas as well? So
And that's just in new stuff or in existing?
that is only in new
stuff, new
after April
development.
1st, 2020.
Yeah.
Me personally, there's so much buzz about this. I think the state's gonna mandate meters to be installed at some point and soon.
I thought
Yeah,
they
across
already
the
had,
board.
but the date's 20 years out.
They just asked for when cities can have it done. And we said,
We pushed
your
it out
message
far.
was as far out as you can push it. That's
So after this drought year, back to back, you can expect in legislation this coming,
It's gonna get more push.
it's gonna be a ton.
Sure. But it hasn't been mandated yet. I misunderstood that.
Hasn't
All
yet.
that by 2030 was they called out.
May have been something
I think
like that, but it was a
23 sounds
long
about right.
ways out there, and
Called
so.
out to be ready.
What I would anticipate is when we would get enough of those, if they're required, and when we install enough and they come online, and we imposed a fee for the pressure irrigation, the culinary water rate should come down, and that should balance out. And so, keep that in mind, it may not be a fee increase.
It's just a
It would
transfer.
actually
I mean,
be-
we're actually balancing the two funds.
And that would accomplish more of what Juan was trying to explain, is each system paying for itself through the fees that are used. Right now, there's approximately 300 properties in town, most of which are in the Fieldstone development. 180 plus are out there that don't have secondary connections. So they aren't being billed that monthly fee on the pressure irrigation, but their water rates are thus that they're essentially helping to cover the cost of the pressure irrigation. I think there's some justification for that because the PI system is helping decrease the demands on our culinary. There's some pressures that we would have to put on our culinary if everybody didn't have the secondary system. So I think there's some values that they gain, but.
Yeah, the tricky thing out there is some of them have the impression that Anderson Farms somehow is gonna help their community.
A stub was put in where they could connect, but they would have to basically
Tear up all their-
vote. Well, they would have to vote to impose a special improvement district and tax themselves to pay for the cost of that. So we haven't had that request yet.
And what would be the level of participation it'd have to be if that were to go through and they would,
It would have to be 50% or more would have to vote
I
for it.
didn't know if it was higher than a 50. Thank you.
50+1.
There you go. That's the way it always works, right?
Sorry.
No, you're good. That's all part of the, and we're gonna touch more on that, on those fees.
Okay.
So this chart right here covers, fees clear from 2001, and it just kind of jumped every 5 years or so to show, where we had increases. The cemetery in 2000 was 200, received, an increase to 400, 550, 700, and to the current 1,300. Water.
More expensive to die, isn't it? No,
Yes.
kidding.
The water fee, like Adam was referring to, we've had increases every year. In 2017, 2018 is where we jumped to that block rate, saying if you use 6,000 gallons, it's this much, and so forth to the 4 blocks. So I actually took an average, so I didn't include all the blocks, but you can see that every year it increases. When we have an orange mark is where we actually decrease the fee. So we're constantly looking at them and making adjustments up or down. Most of them are to the upside. This is the area where, let's see. Of course, we haven't seen that increase. And then in 2018, we started charging the Anderson Farms, and then they also received a tiered rate. So if you use so many gallons, you're gonna be paying for so much more, and if you have a certain size of water meter or connection, you also pay more for that meter. Okay, this is the bill comparison that I was gonna talk to you about. This is the drinking water. I picked some residences here. One in Locust Avenue, one in the west side. That is just a regular 7,000 square foot lot. And then we have the park strips. One of them is a 1-inch meter and the other one is a 2-inch meter. So the regular water usage, you can see the units. These are thousands of gallons. So 6,000 gallons, 3,000 gallons. And when you add those, for those locations, we're actually using 39,000 gallons, okay?
In what period of time?
In the month of July. This is July, the month of July 2021. On the secondary water side, for the same number of gallons, and we're not metering this first residences here, we are taking 570,000 gallons out of the culinary side. So we are using way less than culinary. If we had to do all this with culinary water, we would need about another 4 wells just to.
Out of the secondary, I think you said culinary.
Well, if we were to provide
Oh, I see
this
what you're
water
saying.
usage
Okay.
from culinary water, we would have to
drill more wells to provide that,
Do we have that slide?
This is one that I get some information late, and then I modify this one, but I can send this presentation back to you. So this residence is here, see, on the culinary side, they pay a base rate depending on what zone you're and how many times we have to pump the water to. So the higher you are, you have that 32.56 base rate, and then the rest of the city pretty much is on that 27.96. If you are in the Canberra, it's just a little higher. And on the secondary water side, we actually pump about 10 more times than we do culinary. So you can see these base rates do not start to keep up with just the power demand to pump all that water up to the upper reservoirs. And then this is where Anderson Farms, like Adam was saying, they pay the regular base rate plus the additional rate for their water usage. This person here in Ivory Homes, the regular, the common areas, they have a 2-inch meter, and just their base rate for that meter is $21 plus the $10 fee.
Go back to that real quick, Juan, just let me make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So the only one in that group that is metered, that is a single-family residence, is that 323 North Old Farm Lane, correct?
Right, that's the one that is currently getting a bill right now, and that's in the
So for a
Anderson Farm.
7,200 square foot lot, about the third of the size, it's paying total 1,806.
Right, and if you go here to the largest lot that we have in this scenario, it's paying $15 for their irrigation, for their bill.
Why is the base rate 8 out there in Ivory? Is that what we just set it at, or
That's-
anyone who's metered is
So
at 8?
anything under a certain amount of square footage pays a lower rate. So if it's under 10,000, I think if it's under 10,000 is $8. And then when you go from 10 to 20,000, it's a certain amount. And from 20 to 30, it's a different amount. And that's how the fee was set back in 1993.
Do you think that that 658, the amount that they're paying would go up at an equal rate to the square footage as you went up through those bigger lots?
I actually have a spreadsheet prepared that if you want me to go out of this, I can do the scenarios for each one and see what, according to the proposed usage, what the bill will look like for each one of those lots.
I mean, out there was very specific costs that we're trying to cover with that lift station and some of the infrastructure that went in, and so I wouldn't necessarily try to compare a fee out there to everywhere else in town, would be my gut feeling.
Okay.
That makes sense. Usage, yeah, you could look at, say, here's how much they used on a 7,000 square foot lot versus a 15, but I would be hesitant to say the base rates are gonna be equal because of some of the infrastructure that we're trying to cover.
We would do something similar to what we're doing with the culinary. We'll do some kind of cost analysis and say, okay, to do this, we have to do a good review of what those fees are.
So this is incorporated in our utility rate study that we look at every year, and so that specific fee out in that area.
Okay.
So in my case, if you're gonna meter every place in the city, there's a direct correlation on what their bill would be based upon their water usage.
Absolutely.
And so where I'm not watering, theoretically, my bill would go down.
Yep.
And where my neighbor waters every day,
His would go up.
it would go up.
Correct.
Big time, which is a usage fee, and that's really where you need to get.
But you would still recommend a base of some kind in a metering situation?
We could do something with a base rate that it's just basic to cover certain expenses, basic expenses, and then from there, we would, what I anticipate is charge the usage fee to cover.
Same thing what a power company does, they have
Right.
different rates based upon certain levels. You know?
A few years ago, we had a good conversation on base rates, and from what I recall, and this made a lot of sense to me, people want this on demand. So as soon as they turn the tap, they expect water to come out. And so even if they're on vacation for a month and they don't use anything, there are still costs that we as a city have to incur to maintain and operate and treat that water and make sure that it's there and available when they open that tap. And so that is what the base rate is encompassing. Their usage rate is then those supplemental amounts of water that we're treating and providing.
So
But
in
there
that
is
bit-
that base level that we always have to be ready to
Potential
go.
that they may want, they may
Yep.
not want it,
Yep.
but that,
Delivery
Rocky
system
Mountain Power does
Yeah.
the same
ready to
thing.
go.
In that base amount, there is no minimum small amount of a quantity of water that's included in that. That's just basically, operation and maintenance.
It's ready to
and
go
whatnot.
when you flip the switch.
It's no, it's
they may
zero.
not turn it on. No,
Well,
there'd be a
there, I mean, there
cost.
is a
No,
base
well,
rate. You
there's
get
no,
6,000 gallons,
no
right?
amount of water in that.
On average usage.
Yeah, that would be the usage.
Just
rate.
clarifying.
So
that.
there's no,
Until they exceed that, right?
No, we charge right from the moment you start using your, for example, you're on your culinary,
But the base rate covers the 6,000.
go back to your slide that had the fees on it. So there's the water base rate
so it's,
per 1,000 gallons. So there is a base, or there is a water usage rate per 1,000 gallons, and then above it, there is a water base rate. So the usage is separate from the base.
Right, the usage is separate, but that's
in,
from gallon one to,
Gallon one.
That's
on
my
like
question.
gallon 1,000, you pay 65 cents for those
Okay.
first 1,000 gallons. There is no,
There's no minimal
right.
amount
Some other
in
cities
that.
do have that, that with your fee, you're entitled to the first so many gallons, and then after that, you start paying.
And we're not gonna have that or don't have that either.
We,
Yeah,
the way we are set up is
From
you have
gallon
the
one.
base rate, and from the moment you get your first 1,000.
Maybe
you
we
get-
look at that and the secondary side, just based on sentiment and past history, maybe some feelings that there's some entitlement where water rights for other stocks were turned in.
I did look up, in 1993, we had about 800 housing units. And so, just to kind of put that in perspective.
And currently our household, our lots are,
I think we're close to 3,000 housing units.
Figure here.
True, or whether they should.
I think that was the belief at the time, but.
So, something interesting on the history of the shares, I came across this document today, and the first time they started selling shares in 1970, they were selling for $25, and your assessment cost was 50 cents.
we weren't around. I wasn't around, but it was a different world.
Right, this is the information, Carolyn, where you either have a share of North Union or you pay that 95% of market value. Just on the last 6 years, our fee, our assessment has increased 125%.
That's on water shares.
That's on the assessment.
Right.
Assessment to maintain the system. or-
Right.
Yep.
The water shares have stayed pretty constant. So this is as far back as I could get information. All these numbers that are in white is just average, and I just fill it in, but the
But that
ones that
100
have,
and, yeah, that 125% is, it was a small denomination to start with, so it's easy to
right.
sound like a big percentage, because we're talking a few dollars to a few more dollars. Correct, Juan?
Correct. So it went from $75 in 2015 to $170 in 2020. So that's what I'm referring to of the increase from here to here.
Yeah, and those are assessments that the canal company collects, not Lindon City. So
We have to pay, so we have 643 shares of North Union times 170, we pay that.
You know, that historical data on
you could
the
do this on
value of the
Can's, look
shares,
up water shares.
having developed during some of that time frame,
Any North Union?
it was a lot more than that.
I just happened to pull it
Trying
up.
to locate
Yeah,
shares.
That's interesting.
It was very competitive, and they were, I mean, there was at one time 35,000 for a share. I mean, it, and that's when the city decided to try to opt for the option that they would try to regulate it, rather than be in that market where the prices were just going way high. We'd allow them to pay a dollar amount based upon kind of the averages or whatever. which I think was fair, anyway.
So I got this information
That's a
from
lot
the
of
people
history.
that have bought some of those shares in those years and because
Well, let me tell you, I bought some shares, and it was higher than that.
Yeah, well,
Well, that's okay, it's
yeah.
all good.
Okay, so the plan, if we are to go with the metering adventure, is that in 2021, 2022, we secure funds. Right now, we have that 75% off coupon. We have to come up with 25%, and I think that's a pretty good deal. Related to when we're gonna start the state to enforce the metering. I think right now they have the incentives, passing these little bills, and they're funding, they're helping with low-interest loans, with grants. But I think when that time expires, to say, you know what, we had plenty of opportunity for you to install your meters with all this help. At that point, I think what's gonna happen is you have to have your meters installed in this short of a time, probably a couple of years. That's what I'm hearing from the Central Utah Water people that are involved with the legislators. And the next plan would be, if we get the funding, to start the meter installation and the education phase from about 2022 to 2025. At this time, I propose not charging for the fee, is just for the usage, is just saying we're gonna install the meters and we're gonna start the education process. After that, in 2026 to whenever we feel comfortable, saying, okay, we're ready to separate both utilities, and this is what the fee would be, and then we make that proposal.
This is still new connections, not existing.
This is
He's proposing
everybody.
This is if we got a grant to install them citywide.
This is citywide.
So I'm just gonna point out on that, I love the education phase, but then just to Bill, people were told your rates will not go up. I know things changed, the reality may not be, but that is what people were told. And we will do.
Ray Brown, you turn in your water shares and you're done for life.
There's a lot of things people remember, a lot of things people forget.
Right.
But they're remembering that, and that will be a massive.
Yeah, we can look at.
I'm not saying
Right.
whatever, I'm just saying that's a
It's
reality that we're here with.
And it's a reality that we can deal with. I mean,
Yes.
let's get the system in place, do it at as low cost as we possibly can, knowing the state's gonna enforce it, or at least require it. And I think even with the CUWCD, the water district that's providing those discounts, I think the state, in reality, they're gonna come out and they're gonna have low-cost loans, or they're gonna,
They already have.
because that was really the rub, that they're gonna do a mandate, and how are you gonna fund it, So I think there's some options there, but I think the more we can be proactive in getting a system in place, then the next jump is that discussion. What do we charge? When do we charge? But we're
In a complete 100% agreement, that when we bill is the key that we'll look at. And there's no way to sugarcoat this, the longer you go, and the fewer the people that were told that.
Right, the less pushback. you
they
get.
die off eventually.
I wasn't gonna say that.
And that's where I think we can
happens.
do a good estimate of those 800 homes that even existed, how many of those are still.
To meet the commitments the city made.
Unfortunately, we did raise rates. It was just on the culinary side. And so the message that we've never raised your cost of your secondary irrigation system is false.
And I would prefer
It's-
not to do that. I'd like
We've
to have a more
raised,
transparent
we've
bill.
made you
billing
pay
on
for
that.
it
And
through another bill.
here's the argument to that. It was kind of like my daughter when we went to Italy, and it said, she thought we ruined her life, and the general authority said, we'll tell her in 3 years she won't want to come back. So we did, and she said, great, ruined my life twice. The fact that we've charged through the culinary system, which is true, we've tried to balance that because they blend together, to use that argument, and it's a viable argument, they'll say, well, you've gone against what you told me, and the reality is, the attempt is to balance it, both systems are covering their costs.
Yeah.
And I think
Which
as
is
a
where we need to
council,
get to.
we're good with it, we should be good with it, that's the right thing to do,
And the main goal with metering is, for me, is to reduce the water usage.
and it should.
Correct.
At one point, we've talked about, and I don't know if it was on our special tour that we were on or in a previous actual evening event, but we've talked about the price that they put in for their particular, what they got for their shares, purchased and otherwise, and the assessment fees that they would have been assessed over the time. And if that could not offset their worries, concerns, and thoughts that Van is bringing up, is that, but for that, if we wouldn't have done it, you'd have been out X amount of dollars, and you've been, so to be able to show some sort of balance, reason why we're needing to do this, because it's, everything that's been expressed here is true, whether it has to be done, or we said something in the past. We're here as a council that now has to, in this time and place, have to now make this decision, and I think to have as much information to maybe some ballpark estimate of what a particular shareholder may have had to pocket, taken out of his pocket at the time over the course of since 1993, I think it'd be a nice one little example or exhibit to show somebody who might have that concern, so.
So essentially a return on investment.
Yes.
Exactly, little
Right.
ROI.
And I'm just saying, this is something we have to address in this process,
Right.
because it will be and is a big deal.
The pushback would be nominal or minimal.
Well, as long as we do our homework, present it in an educated way, and
We had the meeting here where Anderson Homes, state law, we were inundated with people with the idea that secondary metering was going into Anderson.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, you're talking about these people who, back in the day, were told or promised that they
Well,
were.
the back in the days are still around.
Yeah, and this
And that's-
Anderson thing
that's
we're
what Van
talking
is
2 years
saying.
ago or whatever.
But
It
what-
brought them out.
I think it would be large. I think that there would be a significant amount of,
we'll deal with it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we don't go down the road, I'm just saying we need to be prepared.
And I think anything that we can do to be proactive, to say, these are the things that we are cognizant of these, and we've got, let me open my toolbox and let me see, I've got this many ratchets, and I have this in metric and in standards, We need to be able to answer questions no matter what where it comes from, and not assume that they need to just, bite the bullet on this, because then that shows, in my opinion, that we are doing our due diligence as independent representatives of the citizens of Lindon, and that we care. We care about the water today, and we care about the promises that were made in the past. And I think that's how we overcome the obstacles that are going to be there, and then it creates I don't know, just this really nice atmosphere for everybody to just swallow that and say, oh, tough, but I get it. I understand. You've done your work, instead of saying, well, let me get back to you on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I think to Randy's point, I concur with Randy 100%. We just need to set the table. Here are the challenges. Here's the outside pressures that are coming and we're going to have to deal with. How are we going to show that transparency of where we've been, where we are now, and where we need to be, and get the buy-in from the community on a focus and a vision of this is how we're going to address it. And we all have to contribute.
About 2 years ago, whatever it was, we did I was not in the council at the time, I think I was running. There was something at the Christmas time. It was the park, it was something to do with the parks and how things were going to go. I can't remember everything that was done there, but you had this outside group. It was the park master plan. That's what it was. And we had this whole big, it was the tree lighting ceremony one, and we had a lot of people waiting in line for Santa, and they got a lot of opportunity to learn about what we did and what we were about to do.
Held them hostage.
And it was really nice as they waited for that. Some people came just for that, not just for Santa.
They were browsing the stations.
Yep, and so I think an opportunity to present to the public way before spring gets here and during the snowpack time is that maybe we'll have some, I don't know, people doing a snow dance instead of a rain dance. I'm just hoping to get a snowpack going, but a time to educate the citizens very early on, even in this current calendar year. I think it would be great, and we can show some of these things that we're worried and concerned about, and talk to the citizens face to face, and we as council members, that they can know that we're listening to them, that we're not just this entity that they're afraid to come and talk to.
Some of those conversations will be nose to nose, because
Yes.
they'll get in your face.
But then they'll feel heard. That's just my opinion. I'd rather tackle it like that.
I think when some of the residents turn in their shares, they probably have a lot of land and they had the way to get their lateral to irrigate their land. And they had to go and take the turn and open the gates to flood irrigate. Now as they have subdivided, they now turn the sprinkler clock on, and there's the convenience of getting their water. And, but I don't know how many of those, probably have to sit down and see who are some of those.
And what's interesting is being part of those discussions, the initial intent of the city was to make sure that all the water rights that existed in the city remained in the city. And in my case, my property never had water rights. So I had to go out to the open market, which made it a little bit of a challenge, but it all worked out. Let's keep moving. I think
we're all in agreement.
If I could just bring something real quick, I'm not there yet personally.
Yeah.
And I just don't want that to be a surprise a year down the road, 6 months down the road. I think a state mandated metering of secondary water is a lot different than us being proactive in metering the water. I think there's a big difference there.
I agree.
I think that we've put an education into place, and I've had a lot of neighbors come up to me and say, hey, yeah, I'm conserving water. I want to know the results of that. Juan just said the main reason for us to do metering is to conserve water. Well, have any of our efforts worked so far? I'd like to know that before we spend $2.7 million, and I know that some of that will come from grants, but to spend that amount of money just so that we can meter, I mean, Van said, hey, I want a meter, but I don't want to charge for it. So we're paying $2.7 million just to have some information. Frankly, I don't know that amount of expense is worth some information.
So if we're awarded the grant, our match is about $600,000 to $700,000.
Right.
So the rest of that would be grant funded.
I
Just
agree.
to put that in what we would be paying.
So,
Absolutely.
valid point. I think as a council, can we agree that any new development that goes in, that we require metering to be put in?
We already do require that.
Required by state
Be
law.
comfortable with that, because
absolutely.
eventually,
required.
what's gonna end up happening, if the state does mandate it, then we're gonna have to find a funding source, and we'll have to time it to be least costly to the city or whatever. So I'm not saying when that is, but as long as we're doing new development, we're getting closer to,
Which we already are doing that.
yeah.
So one of the things that I would say at this point is we talk about metering. I'm going to back up a little bit on the ability to measure what's coming down the system. In our meeting there, they said, okay, Lindon's used 150 feet of their acre feet out of their 482. PG Irrigation has used 170 acre feet of their 37 acre feet. Comma, we really can't measure that very accurately.
Yeah.
So for me, I think one of our primary focuses is going to have to be our ability to measure in the system what we're getting, how much comes in, how much we used. That's gonna be a big deal, because if that particular case, if you can prove that, we're having a great water year. As a system, we're out of water. And the ability in the past was, inefficiency was never a problem. Because there was so much water, there was so little usage, it's just going down. So anyway, I think our focus has to be first and foremost on the system to measure what's going in and what we send, how much we keep, because that is determining allocations.
And
To know if you got what
I
you
agree.
what
Good
you paid
information,
for.
right?
And to that point, and I'm sorry to prolong this, but I want to make sure that my comments in saying that we need to be proactive doesn't mean I'm supportive at this point to pull the trigger on actually doing the meters, other than just to educate ourselves, educate the citizens about where we're at, where we've been, where we're going to. Van's point, and he's brought this up before, and this is something that we've dealt with even on the water tour, and that was that, okay, metering at my house is one thing, on all of our homes is one thing, but what is it coming down? Where's the actual conservation? Would the best conservation possibly be in piping our system, or how it's going? Where is the leakage? We could all be doing our best, but if it's all evaporating or whatever because of the infrastructure lack thereof, or the quality or the lack thereof, coming from North Union and all the other water principles, you know, we're not maybe spending our money on the most essential portion of this, perhaps. I'm not saying we aren't.
Well, it's both.
It's all, yes, there's just so many components, and I think if we did have some sort of a exhibit for the public to participate in at some community event, this would be an opportunity to get their input, and then for us to, them to see where we're standing and why we're doing all these components, and understanding that it's what you're doing and what's happening, you know, down the road, and who's putting clippings in. I mean, just the whole thing that we just all learned and went through on this water tour. If the citizens could see what we've seen and what we know. I don't want them just to trust us. We're gonna get better buy-in from them if they know what some of the things we know.
Yeah, the conveyance is a problem.
Yep.
We saw that,
Yes.
that we're losing tons of water through there on that talk we had with Central Utah.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also, what can we control? We can control our delivery. And if we get good information, it's like I'm gonna try to lose weight, but I don't know how many calories are in a hamburger. I mean, we have to get that measurement. So I say, okay, based on my build, I'm gonna, you know, 1 hamburger is enough. If I eat 2, I'm gonna get fat, type thing. So we have to measure. So we need to know where we're going with that. So that's the main reason for measure.
It's all important components, because if we see somebody that's like, well, I'm doing my part, but somebody else is not, and they might, whether it's the conveyance of how it's getting here, people are not going to buy in. Like, they're gonna eat their hamburger and think, oh, whatever.
And I can prove it. If I don't have a reading, I can prove where the problem is.
So, Juan, stage this, I mean, every step of the way, and I think the reality of it is, some council members are maybe more supportive to move that staging quicker versus others, and that's okay. But I think if you can delineate the staging and the investment and the time, you know, the potential timing, then we can, as we progress or stay in a position, we can at least have that discussion based upon the circumstances, what we're dealing with. And that may be the motivator that moves us to the next stage.
One of the things too, I talked with you, Juan, at length, and I think this would be great to educate all of us on the councils. You get that data on the North Union. You had an idea, maybe because the North Union would take significant investment to pipe, as Randy is saying, on that conveyance to save the water. Do we look at the numbers of abandoning that and then just putting our backbone conveyance with the Provo water system, and what that looks like, you know, if we were to maintain North Union, do those investments, those capital infrastructure investments, and continue that usage versus converting the shares. So that's something I think all of us should look at and evaluate seriously.
Yeah, so we're in the process of evaluating what the condition of the North Union and the Provo Bench. We're doing a study along with the Central Utah on that water savings. What's our loss, the water loss study. And that should be completed here in the next couple months. Hansen Luz is conducting, it's a third-party engineering firm, and we will bring that information to you on.
So we can see what the benefit might be.
Yeah, see how
versus
much,
cost.
how much we're actually losing
Yeah.
down in infiltration. That's even before we try to conserve water with our users. So that phased approach would.
And the
Keep going.
The plasticized work that we did has what, Adam, is it a 5-year life, 3 to 5 year life, and we're into it 2 years?
We're beyond that.
We're beyond the efficacy of that lasting right now.
It's already kind of crumbling
Okay.
away and
What about the information on whether metering is effective? Van had requested that at the last meeting. Is that something you can get into? Or does it work? Is there proof? Is there data that cities have provided saying we put it in and this was the decrease?
yeah, so when
If we just get that information, that'd be
when I
great.
brought Ron Clegg and Rick Malloy, they were talking about what Weber Basin District is, which is huge. And they said that they saw
30%.
Was that up in Weaver?
Voluntary,
Putting in the meters, no.
Right,
which is
not by
significant.
charging for it.
And it makes sense if you know how much you're using.
Juan, was that in Weber?
It's called the Weber Basin
Okay.
District, so it's not just,
Right.
it's the entire
Just trying to
irrigation.
remember geographically where they were located. Thank you.
Yes, and I can bring you that information.
So are we helping you at all? Do you feel like you're being overwhelmed? Answering all of it?
We can handle it. We're just trying to get some guidance and see where you want me to go.
I think you're getting a lot of guidance, so.
So this system,
Juan's the man.
if we go and install the entire system, we're looking at $2.7 million, of which 677,000 is from the city, and then we have that $2.3 million from $2,031,000. The other approach was to just do the large meters and do that phased approach, and that will be about 201 meters at a total cost of $577,950, and our part would be $145,000. This amount includes this expensive part, which is the software and infrastructure to be able to read the meters, and we can go with that phase approach. The only danger is that there are going to be more people looking at installing the meters, and we might lose some of those matching funds. And instead of being 75%, we might get 50%. Or
Pros and cons, just list them, and everybody can read them, understand them, and then voice what they want to do.
And then why now? Need good information to make good decisions. There's a drought year, there's a lot of publicity, so we get a lot of buy-in from our residents even. And let's see, what else do we have here?
We haven't had any residents apply for a permit to drill a well yet, have we?
No.
Doesn't go through our office, but not that I'm aware of.
I mean, that could happen.
We do have one or two in town.
Yeah.
And the last 3 pages is the actual application for Department of Natural Resources. And this one I filled out with the entire amount. Just waiting to see if you want me to pull the trigger on 677.
Make sure it's free, and Jake will be with you. I mean, he's with you then.
So
What is the
keep in
deadline to
mind, if we
deploy
are
the-
awarded this
Yeah.
grant, we do have the federal funding that we can use on water that could be used as a match on this, that, as far as we're aware, that could be an eligible option for that.
Give us all the
What is the
options.
timeline to
There-
deploy the grant if it was awarded?
There is no timeline to apply.
There's
There is
no deadline to
It's
to
just first come,
utilize.
first served, so might be a time when it says,
Do I remember what they were saying is that we could apply for it, but it doesn't mean we have to accept it.
But the,
We're waiting to
but
see
the
if we get
account,
funds.
they could initially
I agree. I
promise
mean,
a certain
yeah, if we
number
can
of
get it done,
awards, and it's just, it's first
not
come
out
on
of
use,
our pocket.
use of the
I mean, it
the
is.
account, they might grant.
so right now this grant that is in place is for about 5 municipalities that meet that description. If after a certain amount of time says nobody's applied, then they open it to the
To the
second
next
phase.
round.
Right. And
Yeah.
then
Keep going.
in this year's budget, I have $300,000 already for a secondary water project. So I would only need another $377,000 to send this application for the full amount.
So how come we have so much money in the secondary budget already? How'd you do that?
I requested the money and you guys approved it very
I was
nicely.
gonna say, I believe it
We're already
was
halfway
in the
there.
budget.
So yeah.
And I think we've all been in agreement on the ability to control in our parks with the smart controllers, and I think we were all there. We wanted to do that for sure.
Yeah, that's still moving forward with, that's a separate grant from Central Utah. It's a reimbursement program, so you can do 2 and then you get paid for 2, and it's slower. 57 clocks is.
So what happens when the state, and I shouldn't even bring this up, but I'm gonna throw it out real quickly, because Vineyard's looking at it. Our mow strips, or our strips that the state comes in and says you need to decrease that, make it more of a rock structure.
Strip irrigation.
Yeah,
Flip the strip.
because that may be coming, and
Yeah.
quite likely it will be coming. But I think there'll be incentives for individual residents to do that, and as cities,
There's already an incentive,
Yeah.
they're paying you $1.25 per square foot. I'm already doing that at Public Works, I'm getting rid of some grass. But I think that's more part of planning and zoning, where they say how
right,
much
the
you
zoning,
have.
what you can and can't
right.
do, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
What's the next one?
keep going.
What's that?
You got any more?
No, this is just the application, I'm just, where do I go from here? Do I bring something to the table for approval, or what? I'm kind of new at this. Something we talk first?
So you're submitting this grant application. So we need to find out if we get awarded, that ups the conversation.
Yeah,
for-
because it doesn't obligate us.
If we don't get awarded, then this changes a lot.
Do you want me to apply for the full $677,000?
So here's the
That's
question,
what I
does
thought
it,
they okayed the
I
last
think we
time.
said that was okay to apply because it doesn't obligate us.
That's why my
If it doesn't
question was.
obligate us, that's great.
deploy the funds? But it provides an option. Okay.
We'll submit that application
Money we're
next
getting
week.
from ARPA is at 1.3.
All righty.
$300,000 more dollars.
Sewer and water infrastructure.
Haven't actually offered up some money.
Yeah, it's just a matter of prioritizing
Yeah.
on the projects that we have coming.
Well, if you've already got 300,000, then we're only talking another, what?
We can make this work if we get awarded.
Let's just pursue all the options, get it out there, and then the council can step up and see what they're most comfortable with.
Okay, I will submit that application next week.
We good with that?
I do.
Good.
Okay.
Okay with that, Jake? I mean,
Yeah.
We're not committed.
We're not committed.
yeah, that's fine. We're still dating. We're just not committed here.
I like it.
Have you met the parents? This would be a, do we want to meet the parents discussion at that point. Do you
Say thank you. I mean, this,
Always.
you see what is coming, you kind of know what's needed.
We hit the jackpot.
We're not quite there yet, but we're coming along.
It's
Okay?
Thank you for lending you to that.
the chemicals that came in, put it in.
Thank you for.
Okay, item number 12, it's one more public hearing.
Make a
Someone,
motion to open a public hearing. Sorry to cut you off.
I have a motion by Van, second by Carolyn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Budget amendment.
I don't think my mic's working very well. Kristen is not here tonight. And
Recovering?
so
Is she good?
she is doing better. Her husband unfortunately was put on a respirator on Saturday, and so with COVID, and so that's difficult right now for their family. So we've got some budgetary updates here, and just running through quickly on some of those. We had some changes in revenues from our Public Works area that she's listed there, some updates on travel and training. She's listed these in the notes there on page 94. Those amounts and the changes in there. We did have in our budget, so we surplused a vehicle here tonight. And then part of why we're moving things around, we had some repairs on an engine work that was pushing 7,000 when you added everything up. So we feel like it's an older vehicle, it's beneficial to replace that. And so this is adding a new vehicle, a new truck in Public Works.
And as a purchase, not as a lease, like with the cops.
This is as a purchase, yeah.
Got it.
And then some other changes there. This travel and training change at the police department, you've already reviewed, and so this is catching that up. Parks Department, we have some increased rental equipment there rather than purchasing. Cemetery, we had the container that we've talked about and has been purchased. And then use of fund balance, this was just changes in revenues and expenses that were balancing the budget. And so that's a really high, fast
Any
overview.
questions?
Love the notes. They summarize it so well. I'm all in favor of this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any public comment?
Motion to close the public.
Oh, can we really do that?
Second.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Van. We have a motion by Randy, second by Van. All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Mayor, I'll move to approve Resolution 2021-17-R, amending items in the fiscal year budget 2021-2022.
I'll second.
A motion by Jake, second by Randy. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous again. Thank you.
I'll second his motion.
We're getting in rhythm
Want to get
here.
out of here before 10. Let's see.
Motion by Van, second by Jake to open a public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're now in a public hearing.
We know how to do
Fee
this.
schedule.
So the fee schedule, this was a request Juan's caught here. We amended in June as part of the budget adoption a few cemetery fees, and then realized this is one that should have been added. And so this is some of those changes that we made to the fees for burial of an urn. So for an interment for the urns, and we had reduced those resident fees on the interments because they paid for all of it up front at the time of a purchase of the burial. So this is the one change then would be reduced to 0, the resident fee on the burial of the urn, and then maintain the non-resident fee.
With our fee updates a few months back, have you seen any decrease in the rate shopping we saw? Good.
That's the right answer. That's a good answer.
Yes, people actually call and they're shopping.
Yeah.
All right, looks like a matter of housekeeping, Mayor, correct?
Yeah,
Just
any
to
public
clean this
comment?
up?
Okay.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have 2 errors. I heard 2 things.
Van Randy.
Van Randy, go ahead. All in favor?
Aye.
Mayor, may I make a motion
Yes,
then?
please.
All right, I move to approve resolution number 2021-18-R, amending the Lindon City fee schedule to update cemetery interment of urns as
Second.
presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Carolyn, second by Jake. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous again. Thank you.
Good catch, Juan.
14, review and action, job reclassifications for public works restructuring. We're doing a lot tonight, aren't we? That's good.
Cruising.
So
You're
Juan
busy.
had presented as part of the budget, some modifications to the Public Works Department, and with the retirement of Kevin Muhlstein, our water superintendent, we were kind of waiting for that to occur and make sure that was moving forward before some of these changes were made. So what we're recommending tonight is adoption of a new position would be a stormwater and wastewater superintendent combining. So in Public Works, we had 3 superintendent positions when Juan started. We are reducing now, actually we had 4. We had 4 superintendents. We've reduced that to 2 with this action if it's approved tonight. And then we are creating 2, what we're calling lead positions, one in wastewater and one in streets. And so they are non-supervisory. They don't technically supervise anybody, but they are in charge of more specific projects within those areas of responsibility. And so they are a lead position. When we need street patching or street work done, we're going to go to this person and they're going to rally the troops to get that stuff done. So the wastewater lead and the streets lead are current individuals that we anticipate will be moved into or apply for these positions. And they are moving from range 13 to range 14. So as an administration within our current policies, we're authorized to approve people at various steps within a range. We can't move them to a different range. And so this is increasing that pay range a little bit. It's like $1.60 an hour if it tops out, so. Any questions on those 3 job positions?
This is just the implementation of that flow chart of the hierarchy that you presented several months ago, just, okay? Great.
Okay,
Make a motion if we need.
just, yeah, it's review and action. Okay, yes, please.
I'd like to move to approve the changes to the specific public works job descriptions and pay ranges as recommended.
I'll second.
A motion by Randy, second by Carolyn. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, Juan. 15's yet, one more public hearing.
Let's get this done.
Public hearing.
You want to take this
Mike?
on, Brian?
Second.
Second by Randy.
We're just letting that side of the table do it. Aye.
That's right.
Aye.
You gotta
Okay.
move on it, Mike, you know.
Spanish. See.
Electric signs, huh?
Not electric
Oh,
signs.
I'm sorry.
Election sign.
Election
That-
signs.
we got the same thing, I thought we.
Electric election signs
LED
up.
elections.
That was last time, yeah.
So what happened is back in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court issued an opinion in a decision called Reed versus Town of Gilbert that says any city ordinance that regulates the content of a sign is a restriction on the First Amendment expression of, and so it's unconstitutional. At that time, we went through our ordinance, our sign ordinance, and made sure that it met with that. But this little ordinance was stuck in the miscellaneous section of our public welfare section, and so we did not see that at that time that we did the review. A citizen just brought this up a few weeks ago, pointed out that we had this ordinance that
allows us to fine people if they don't take down their political signs, hoping that we could use that ordinance to address the rather obscene language on a politically based sign that we've had in the city. I wish we could use this ordinance to maybe tamp that down a little bit, but we clearly cannot. Yeah, the First Amendment has said that we have a right to express our political thoughts, even in terms that some people may be offended by. And so we can't use this, and we just need to clean up our code and get rid of this ordinance. It should have been taken care of a few years ago, but that was missed. So we're just asking tonight that we acknowledge that this does violate the court's ruling, and we're just moving to repeal that whole section.
Any questions?
Yes, I do have questions on this, and that is, now, in Lindon, we've not had a problem with people leaving up their campaign signs. Asked my husband, and they're down before I think the votes are counted, and headed to the landfill. But, and I've seen that across the board in the last 10 years that I've been aware of that. So, but this is more than just the removal after 5 days from election. What the other component is?
That it's that it puts that condition based on the content of the sign. That's what makes this ordinance. If we were to say nobody can have any signs up for 5 days past, a certain time frame, then maybe that would pass muster.
Okay.
We would certainly still face a question of whether or not that impacts the First Amendment rights. But this one clearly falls squarely under this Reed versus the town of
And I
Gilbert.
don't want to have that be a problem, but I guess my question is, this last election cycle, we had things that were up until Inauguration Day. What would happen with people like that? I mean, that's clearly past the 5 days.
That's why.
And I don't want to prohibit people expressing that just because it's campaign related.
Right, and that's why this has to go. Because under this ordinance, they could be fined and penalized for keeping those signs.
Okay, and I just want to be very clear,
Right.
because I want to make sure that is,
Right.
makes it so that people can express themselves however it is that they
That's
choose to
exactly
wish.
right.
Okay.
And this ordinance was missed, like I said, but it expressly says, hey, we're gonna fine you if you are expressing your opinion 5 days after the election.
Thank you for that
And-
clarification, because I had some questions about that from other people, so I wanted to make sure
Right.
that we were, do you remember that not too long ago, a few council meetings ago, it was like, we had to do, I think it was the closing of 570, and we had to word it right, and we were kind of getting it backwards and forwards and
Right.
upside down. I just want to make sure this
So
is.
this is, there's
Still
just
keeping
this.
people, making it so they can do that.
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I'm looking
Yes,
for.
yes.
Thank you very much.
So we're
Brian.
just removing this
Okay.
penalty for keeping signs up.
Thank you.
That is currently in our code. We're just pulling it out.
How does this relate to, I don't know if this is an issue in our city, but I've heard of it in other cities where an HOA might try to have a regulation in this area. Does this supersede?
It does not impact HOA. That's a private contractual relationship. So the HOAs still might be able to enforce that. I don't know if, I don't believe that because the First Amendment is a government, restriction on expression of rights. Private parties can contract, non-disclosure agreements and things like that. So this would not apply to an HOA. So HOAs may still, if they have that in their provisions, there are HOAs, you hear about these cases all the time where somebody.
Even a US flag. for
Right, a
example.
US flag, exactly.
Which is-
So this will not impact any HOA, CCNRs that might be out there.
Okay, any public comment? Council, we good?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
You got 3 seconds on that one. You gotta
Pick
choose.
one.
No, I'm going to give that one to Mike, because this.
Arm wrestle.
After we vote.
So, Randy, you okay if he takes it?
He can make the motion. Let's get him on the record for that. He can have whatever he wants tonight.
Okay, Van made the motion,
To
Mike,
close the public hearing.
and Mike made the motion, second, we'll give it to him.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we can, somebody want, jump on it.
to approve ordinance number 2021-16-0 to repeal section 9.32.090 of the Lindon City Code as presented.
Mike, is there a second?
I'll second.
Because he knows he's gonna second Mike.
Too scared to talk.
Okay, Randy made the second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, you stayed around for a long time, sorry.
Thanks, Juan. Yeah, Brian's
you,
around
Juan.
for a while longer.
Okay, item number 16, discussion item.
So this is
Roofing
just-
project.
Yeah, I need your direction on how we should proceed here. So we have not included this in the budget.
What's that?
The numbers were kind of all over the place.
Who's driving this?
You guys asked if I could Photoshop something, and I tried my best. So here's the original photo. We were looking at asphalt shingles, and the cost difference between some of this was quite significant. So, sorry, let me back up and review those. Alex got bids from 3 companies. For metal roofing, it's between $102,000 and $130,000 between those 3 bids. For shingles, we're down into the high 40s and 50,000 range. So he and I felt like, wow, we could re-roof this probably 2, maybe 3 times with shingles for the cost of metal. So,
Lifespan comparison.
you know, on shingles, you can do 20, 25, 30-year shingles, and then the metal is typically, I'm hearing a 50-year, but that's probably the metal itself. I don't know if that's the baked-on finish like what we have. So the company that installed this is apparently out of business, and so or manufactured it is what Alex was able to find. The roof, I think this building, we're going on 20, I want to say it was 21 or 22 years old now. And part of what's driving this, we've got a few protrusions in the back of the building that the gaskets around the pipes for those vents, the plumbing vents, have worn out, and they've got to remove.
And they do.
They've got to remove the metal to actually get those on, and we were pulling so many sheets that we were like, wow, we're pulling a quarter of that roof off to get to and fix all these things, and so we felt like it was worth looking at the total cost to replace. So that was driving it, plus the visual aspect of it. So,
2 quick questions.
yeah.
What is the silicone line here?
So that one, he got a bid, and it was the best way I could explain it. It's a rubberized coating that was over the metal instead of paint. That's the best that I could explain it.
Did he reach out to any other companies, like there's Southam, there's Warburton, local companies that?
For the 3 he got bids from, I don't know if he solicited for more than these 3. So,
Do you know the efficacy of the membrane? I guess that's what you call it.
I don't know a lot of details. He showed me a sample of it. I don't know.
This would be to remove any undercoating, underlayment, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this is a turnkey.
Pull it all off, put it all back on.
Yeah. So we've got some gutter areas that were, the gutters, we did budget something for gutter replacement around the building. We've got some spots that are leaking pretty bad in big storms, and so this was cost that they would enlist for seamless gutters. So to the Photoshop effort, there's my attempt.
We're gonna lose you to Adobe. That's impressive.
I think so. I hate to say it, you guys spent way too much money for this. So I spent several hours trying to make that work, but
Looks good.
so that's just a literal snapped image of black asphalt shingles, and then overlaid as best as I could there. So
are we looking at having some continuity with our other city center structures?
you know, we talked about that, and this is taking you as a city council into the weeds a bit. This is not a legislative item, but this is a pretty visual aspect to our building, so I wanted to bring it to your attention and get your feedback. This is not an action item. This is just giving us feedback on how you want us to approach it and move forward. So we had talked about that continuity between the other buildings. On the little pergola of the public safety building, there is a metal seam roof. And then on the entryway to the aquatic center, there's a metal seam over the little triangle entryway. On the old fire station, the Parks Garage, there's a metal roof. On the community center, it's all asphalt shingles. And so there's some continuity going on, but we've got peaked roofs and flat roofs, and I don't know if,
Yeah, on a flat roof, you don't do a standing seam metal
Yeah.
roof for sure.
yeah, so,
So perhaps like that large couple type structure, would we ever look to mix elements to sort of have that continuity between the other structures?
I guess you could if you chose to do that.
I guess my question is on if we were to do an asphalt, I have several questions actually, but the type of asphalt that we're doing is a huge difference on price points and the look, the aesthetics. I mean, where I like a metal roof, I will have always said that the metal roof and the architecture of this particular building never seemed to go with me. You know, they didn't jive with it's more, I don't know, colonial, I don't know, it's just, they clash to me with all the little cornerstones and everything like that. Most people I've asked don't even notice the discoloration or the oxidation of the building. But I guess to me, it would be, if we did an asphalt, it would matter really to me, the design of what we're gonna do as far as asphalt roof. And you do this all the time, Van. I mean, you know the difference on, I mean, and,
So
yeah.
just the grade of. We would be
Well, the
looking
grade
at
and the type, the look, and so, I
Yeah,
mean, it might not be.
30-year architectural with not,
Architectural.
not pre-tab. Just,
Even in the architectural, there's
They're
step
grades,
after
yeah.
so
step
we would
to
bring
get
this to
a
you in
look and a
October for a
design.
budget amendment.
So, I mean, I know that there's just lots of different components on that, and I want to make sure that that might not be an action item for us, but if we're going to get them, if we're allocating the money, we want to make sure it's as beautiful as possibly can, and that it has something that's really pleasing, because it is, like you said, it's a very noticeable attraction as you drive through, and I'd like to have it as much, I don't know, says something nice about our city if we do go that way. I will ask, though, a couple of questions, and that is that at this time in history where the commodities in construction are so elevated in price, outrageously so, what is the value of doing it now? I realize that we hope that it goes down, but it could actually escalate, and I understand that, but.
Yeah.
So it's that sweet spot that we need to do this at, and so I know we've got to do the repairs. What is the price if we actually do the repairs and just patch this through, and how long are we anticipating that works for?
Repairs, just to get this all fixed in the back of the building, it was between $3,000 and $5,000 on the three different companies. And so as far as escalated costs, yeah, they might come down in the future, but that's a gamble.
And the rest of the
I
roof's
don't-
pretty okay besides this back section?
What, as far as the fading?
Well, just
Beyond the structure a little.
structurally.
Yeah, structure.
Structurally, it's fine. It's aesthetic, and then in the back, we've got several protrusions that we've got to change here. Let me get back to the staff report.
Do we budget this in this year's
Clarification,
budget?
does.
So we
does-
did not include the roof. So here, you can see, there's a couple here on this back corner, and then right there. But they're up high enough that we've got to pull.
Yeah, just go the cheap way, just fix the problems and kick it down the road. No, I'm kidding,
Asphalt the back and keep it
I like asphalt shingles
But
personally.
they have to be
but-
done right, and.
Yeah.
So-
And quite honestly, we do have some Lindon businesses. Is it A&Y that's in Lindon?
Yeah, roofer supply.
Roofer Supply was
Supply.
just our chamber business of the month in July, and I would love to see a bid go out to them, just because they're
They
I mean-
would probably be a
local.
Yeah, they're
That'd be a
supplier,
supplier.
but not an
And
installer.
That's what I'm saying, they could give a reduced rate, possibly.
As long as the installer doesn't suck it up.
Pennies,
Alex
but-
isn't gonna install these?
Get up on the roof.
I don't want the liability if he falls off the roof.
I just didn't want to have a lot of questions if somebody's like, wow, you guys put a new sheet of metal up there and it doesn't match and it looks terrible. That's what I'm envisioning back here. And so keep that in mind. Again,
on the
these are
backside.
tucked, these are all on the backside of the building where we've got to do these repairs. But
This
then
is
we're tearing
The
off
discussion and we're
the gutters
counseling
and,
together.
so.
What do you think, Mike?
Van, are there utility advantages? You know, you have better heating, cooling, retention on metal?
Whatever you do on this, you would want to do a ridge vent. Whether you use the standing seam metal or if you go with asphalt, because that can change probably by 30 degrees your attic temperature by properly venting with a ridge vent. So I would, that would be my,
Have a hard time.
okay, my first question is the contractors, I would like to have seen the specs that went out. You know, what are the materials, are we doing the venting? Because the venting is a huge, huge deal. There's no sense in putting on a roof if you don't vent it right.
I can ask for that. Visually, is there a preference?
We got a half an hour.
I mean, if we're tearing the whole roof off, what would you rather have put back on, given those cost numbers? I guess that's the question.
Well, I'm okay as long as it's, again, as long as it's the right.
As long as it looks and feels the way it needs to look.
It needs to complement the architecture, but it also needs to have some texture to it. Some of it needs to be something that's very
Yeah.
textural.
Black architectural 30-year shingles is what.
But there's more to than just the
Yes.
term architectural. There's
Yes.
various levels of that.
Okay, so
That'll give you a
as-
different look.
And I don't know what those bid numbers came in at.
Yeah.
And so,
And I wouldn't want just somebody who's wanting to just replace the roof to make that decision. Maybe several people to help decide that, because I would hate for somebody to go, what did you choose? At least the decision could be, I don't know, can be blamed on a committee of a small.
So,
This is why I
Van,
don't
Van
ask
and
you to get
Randy
into
are assigned to the
Van-
committee to at least approve it.
Pick color, I would look specs.
That's what I'm saying, the two of you assign them,
I think I'd like to see as a council, I mean, it doesn't have to be law, but I'd like to see some actual photographs or samples
I wouldn't mind that.
of what we're looking at, so we can kind of all, we hang separately, we hang together.
There you go.
well, you
I have
can
no
make a
problem.
recommendation.
Oh, yeah, come back with, this would
And
be
then
our
as a council, we
I
can
would love us to
vote
counsel together on that.
and do it within a week, right?
It wouldn't take long, as long as it's presented to
Public
us.
safety bill.
But
Only good
it's
for
still
30
whether
days,
to spend the
so-
money.
Let's try to use Lynn.
samples and then I'll ask Alex for some more information on the bids that he
You can
received.
jump in, I mean,
It would be nice to have some continuity in the architectural elements with our public
Yeah.
safety buildings. So for example, the
and I
cupola,
prefer,
having a similar
pushing
look
that
and feel to the
because-
cupola on the public safety building. Maybe that's a different material
Agree.
potentially.
The campus
More of a-
feel, we've got all
yeah.
these 4 buildings, 5 buildings.
You know what? Before our next meeting isn't until September, ask anybody if they've ever noticed a difference in the roofing material between the public safety building and the community center.
I have not.
Not Van.
Not
Yeah,
Van.
but
I've
ask,
noticed.
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, it's like, well, we're very concerned about it, but has anybody really noticed that one has shingles
But that
and
might be
one has
coming
metal
from
roof?
somebody who doesn't notice things.
I
So,
know.
but there are people who do notice those things, so.
So then ask, are you okay if we spend $100,000
And
more?
that is my biggest
So-
concern here. But if we are spending it, I want to spend it in a certain
If
way.
we're gonna have someone show us some samples, it would be nice to maybe, again, we don't want to make this too complicated.
Right.
But it would be nice to see some samples of buildings that they've actually done.
Commercial, it was hard. I was looking around as I've driven around the last few weeks, and there are not very many commercial buildings the size of this building that have asphalt shingles. Most buildings are flat roofed in commercial and industrial settings.
Which is stunning.
And so, church,
It's not an option for this building,
Churches.
flat roof.
churches are the one to look at. Almost all of our churches are huge roofs and they're all shingled. So look at those.
Yeah, this would have a
Oftentimes they
church
use
like
tile.
that.
Yeah, Lindon's, the stake center's a tile, or a, yeah, it's the, yeah.
Are we dead set on doing the roof? I think Randy's expressing some concern of whether or not we spend it, and I think I agree with
So
her.
you just wanna leave this?
I think we leave that.
And just repair the back.
That's okay if you choose to
And
do
just repair
that,
the
and then
back.
we'll repair the back and patch it in as best we
I
can.
mean,
It's just, I have a
But
hard
I'm
time
like
spending
Mike,
the
I
money.
think that
I just haven't even noticed that there's some it's discoloration, you say? I'll have to drive by and look
Should
at
we
it.
You'll
ask
notice
the
it.
public, have you noticed the discoloration on the building?
I've seen it.
You'll notice it, yeah, it's,
But to the tune of that much on a budget, that's what we have to do, right?
Well, is there no budget for it this year, right?
No, it just,
amend it, though.
we can amend it.
Make an amendment.
There's plenty of general fund available to do
yeah,
this
we can
project.
adjust for it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just say if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. I think we can.
difference of opinion what that is.
No, I understand.
Metal, shingles,
Well, I'm talking shingles, I don't think I'd wanna go metal for the cost reasons, but I think we can do something nice, and I think just to do it part way would be not the smartest thing to do, just my opinion.
pool's closed down for the season, people aren't gonna see it. I mean, you can
Yeah.
go,
The sun's usually in your eyes.
And what was it a 30 or 50 year on this particular roof, if it was, if the
Supposed to be a 50-year.
50 on the metal?
I believe most metal roofs are 50 years.
We're into
what they
it
claim.
22.
5? Yeah, 21.
Okay, Adam, you asked for review and action or discussion, and
gotta
Um,
review.
you got way more than you
Yeah, I
wanted.
will bring back some samples and some more details on the budget, and we'll talk about it some more,
Okay.
so. Okay,
And again, that ridge venting.
Yeah,
you
I've got
gotta
an
ask
ask for
on
that.
That's just a huge, huge deal.
Okay, let's move on. Number 17, review and action on cell tower lease extensions with Crown Castle.
so we've got currently 2 cell towers that are on city property, one being, let me find this here really quick. So one is behind the Public Works yard in the back corner, and this was right there. So our Public Works building off to the right here, this is the LDS cannery. There you can see the shadow of it. So we are looking at extending this lease, and they will pay us $17,000 to keep the same agreement that we have right now. But it extended that out for an additional about 20 years on that one. And then this one behind the old public safety garage, they have there you can see the shadow of that cell tower just over in the corner of the parks yard. This one was coming up on a renewal, and what they provided to us was an offer that we felt was fair. Let me grab the staff report again here. Yeah, so it increases, this is our current annual rent or lease on the tower, and then it would change to this amount starting this year. It is a 4% escalator each year in our current agreement with the cell tower. The difference after the extension of this, if we went out to that 2066 date, would be $336,000 increase over those years. So we felt like this was good, plus they're paying us the $17,000 per pole, so a $34,000 signing bonus essentially. So, or we can say no and wait in a few years and see if they come back with something different. They have approached us a couple times in the past 4 to 5 years, and we've said, no, I haven't brought it to the council. This proposal seemed better than the ones I've seen in the past, so.
Brian, do we have a force majeure clause in these contracts with these entities?
Yeah.
All right. They don't have like a zinger where we'd have to buy them out the difference if we had to?
No, as a matter of fact, our contracts provide that if once the contract ends, they have to remove the equipment, or else we get it for free. And so, but.
One of the discussions I know we had years ago with, specifically by the former, here on campus, was if we ever wanted to develop that property in some fashion, could we have a way to, we didn't want to be engaged in a super long contract.
Yeah,
If it's still under contract.
Yeah, if it's still under contract, when you're saying force majeure.
That's an extenuating circumstances, act of nature, God.
Right.
Right.
We have that provision in there, but yeah, we would have to buy them out if we wanted to expand out and that. And this contract would extend that contract out, and would add value to that contract. So-
Okay.
We put a provision in it that it doesn't mess up my satellite radio whenever I drive by.
Does it do that?
Yeah.
Council? Any thoughts on that?
Pretty much free money.
Comfortable with it?
Okay. I don't hear a lot of comments, but someone want to
Our
move that
towers,
forward?
are they needing any maintenance? At this point, it seems like they haven't really required much.
We've had a recent new carrier co-locate on this, so this is just the tower itself. This doesn't involve the co-locator. So the co-locators also pay the city a fee. So we are getting about double this from the cell towers each year, because we have 2 or 3 located on each tower. And so nothing maintenance-wise that I'm aware of that the city needs. And so they're pretty careful about what they do in and around that, so.
Every city needs a few cell towers. The school district, I think, I would like to know the numbers they're getting off theirs.
Almost make it a good revenue.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, someone want to take action on this? Or not?
I have to use my words.
I'll make a motion that we extend the cell tower leases with Crown Castle at the rates proposed in the renewal agreement.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike, second by Jake. Any further discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It sounds like it's unanimous. So the next item is a closed executive session.
Enjoy your golf.
Isn't that nice? You get to go home.
Hi, Cole.
John, thanks, man.
Okay, someone want to make a motion to,
Make a motion to, how do we do this? Do we close this and open that? I want to go into an RDA, apparently. How do we do this?
Start writing this terminology in here.
I know. How do we go into, I make a motion to go into a closed session.
go out of the open session and convene into a,
Closed
And
executive
do a
session.
roll call.
right.
Thank you. I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Carolyn, let's do a roll call. Randy?
Yes.
Aye, yeah.
Yes.
Jake?
Van Broderick, aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
Mike? Okay, it's unanimous.